You ready to do this, Patrick?
Let's get it.
You ready to do this, Chris?
Yep. Punch it, Chewy.
Welcome, super friends, to the Fortress of Nerditude podcast, a safe place to talk about all things in nerd and pop culture. I'm Spencer Stapleton, and my co-pilot tonight is Chris McCrackin and Patrick Novosel.
Yeah.
Hey.
We're three nerds that just refuse to grow up. Thank you for joining us. This is episode 133. We release every Thursday morning. You can find us on our website, fortofnerd.com. We have links to iTunes, Google Music, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, everywhere podcasts are available. Stop by, relax a while. If you like what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and get us automatically each and every week in your ear holes. Patrick, what is going on? Welcome back. How are you doing today?
Oh, yeah, it's good to be back, man. Thanks for having me on again. So the past week, me and the family went down to Florida for an entire week.
Nice.
Yeah, we stayed on at a beach house with Mel, my kids, her two brothers, their wives, their 5 kids, and her parents. So there's 15 of us in one house.
Wow.
Yeah,
And you survived.
That's a lot of people.
Right, it is a ton of people. But what's great about this house is it's a 4-story house, and everyone has their own rooms, even the kids. So it's something where you kind of have to find people if you wanna hang out with them. So it was good. We stayed down there for a week, and I think I might have left the house other than the beach one time, and that was to walk a quarter of the mile down the road to get some ice cream. It was just a relaxing vacation to where it was either the beach, the pool, or we're sitting on a couch, and all the while drinking some adult beverages to make the day go by a little bit faster or shorter, whatever. So, we had great weather up until the last day where it rained the entire day, and it was like raining buckets. And what's cool is right behind our house there's like a lake, and this lake, when the rain was coming down, it came down so much that this lake was the water level was rising, and it had spilled over onto the beach and through the beach, through the sand into the ocean. So it was kind of like its own natural rapids. So there was
Cool.
there were kids on boogie boards up on the lake and going all the way down into the ocean. It was, I don't know, maybe 100 yards of these rapids, and it was double red flags, and double red flags means you're not supposed to be in the ocean, but that's when the waves are the best. So it's they're not going to do anything. They're just going to tell you to get out.
You could die, kids, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. There was one time where there was one of those buggies, one of those lifeguard buggies, and they were getting a call down the beach because there was apparently a drowning victim up north or east, and he couldn't get past because of this natural rapids that was occurring. So yeah, wow. There were some heavy waves, but it was all people just going out there on their own volition if they wanted to get out there. But with us and the kids, we just stood by as the sand kind of fell down into this rapids and made this little stream into a huge river looking thing. So, but that was that was really cool to see that. And as far as games I'm playing, oh man, I have been playing a ton of Apex Legends. There's season 1 is coming to a close soon. So me and Mark Boucher, Jonathan Baker, and some other people are playing almost nightly. I'm still not to level 100 yet. I haven't level capped yet. They have. I don't play as much as them, but I have been playing a ton of that lately. Other than that, Yeah, I mean, just vacation and playing some games, man.
Man, I still have to jump in and give that a try. I've got it downloaded. I haven't had time.
One day, I mean,
I hear good things, though.
it's fun. It's a good time.
Well, good. So, Chris McCrackin, you are on the podcast for the first time. I'm super excited to have you on. Tell the super friends who you are, what you do, and a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Chris McCrackin. I am part of the Married to the Games podcast. The four of us that podcast each and every week. Our Twitter handle is at MTGcast. Sorry, I'm not usually the one who does all this stuff. And so, yeah, I guess that's kind of what, if you know me on the internet in any real way, that's probably where you know me, is from that community. I was a part of the community before I was on the show, and I've been on the show for about a little over 3 years now. Or gosh, man, time flies. It feels like I've just been there forever now. It almost is hard to remember back the days before whenever I wasn't actually on the show. But yeah, I just started out just listening to the show, and then one day, through happenstance and just meeting people, and it just kind of happened that I ended up getting a part on the actual show, and it's been a great ride. Loved every minute of it. Been able to meet wonderful people like you two guys. And then as far as my full-time gig, I do video production for a retail company. Basically like product videos and social videos and all those different kinds of things like that. So that's my full-time gig. So with that in mind, at work this past week, we're prepping. We have a big shoot next week. The first half of the week will be all shoot days, but one prep day and then 2 shoot days. So I've just been working on getting all that stuff finalized. We're renting some gear for that. We finalized what we're going to be renting, but I was doing a lot of research to make sure I was choosing the right pieces of gear and doing some test shooting and all that kinds of stuff. So just all of that is getting like wrapped up, to a tiny little bow, so that when production day happens, we can just have all of as many ducks in a row as we can have, because something's going to go wrong. It always does.
Yep.
So just as long as we have as much of that kind of figured out, all the better. Outside of that, I had kind of the opposite weekend, at least in terms of weather-wise, because I live in Dallas, by the way, Dallas, Texas, and we got slammed with storms on Saturday. And the crazy thing is that I live a little bit north of the Metroplex, and it hit us, and it hit really hard, but it was in and out really fast. And it really wasn't torrential rain necessarily, but it was really, really strong winds. We were lucky that, there's no damage to the house. That we live in an area where we've got some wooded areas behind us, and a lot of the neighborhoods, it's a kind of a more established neighborhood, so we've got a lot of really large trees throughout the neighborhood. And luckily, it seems like nobody had any kind of damage. There were just a few trees would lose some limbs that just happened to land in the yard or anything like that, and nothing on our property in particular. But down as the storm went and blew through downtown Dallas and all those areas, lots of crazy stuff happened. We still have people that work at our office that live in downtown Dallas that do not have power still.
Whoa.
And that was on that, the storm was Saturday afternoon. And we were without power. Our power, we lost power as well. That was the only real big thing that happened to us. But we lost power right around 1, and we didn't have it back until almost 11. So
wow.
And like I said, there's friends of ours, we've reached out to them hey, if you need a place to stay, you can come stay at our house. But it's kind of nuts that there's still, and because I live Dallas is so large that to get to downtown Dallas, it could take me 40 minutes. And it's just out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. But then you watch the news or you talk to some people that live down there, it's oh my gosh, there's still a bunch of parts down there that are dealing with a lot of stuff. So that was kind of crummy, especially for our friends that are still dealing with that right now. But luckily, nobody that I know of anyways has had any huge damage to their home. It's, yes, being without power is a bummer, but I mean, if that's the worst of your problems, that's probably what most people take, rather than have a tree fall over on their house or their car or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
So outside of that, everything's been fine, but the weekend was a little crazy. On the gaming side, I'm kind of in the same boat as Mr. Patrick. I was playing a lot of Overwatch because they had the anniversary event, and it ended on Monday. And that's one of the best events. It unlocks all the gear that you could earn from every single event they have throughout the year. Plus, there's anniversary-specific stuff. So I was playing a lot of Overwatch, trying to get as many loot boxes as I could. I still play a lot of Hearthstone these days. Especially on the go. That's really the only mobile game that I play, and I actually prefer to play it either on my phone or an iPad, of all the different places I can play it. And then I've played a lot of Apex Legends. Not quite as much as I did Hearthstone this past week, but overall I played a lot. I hit the cap on Season 1 Battle Pass probably, it feels like a month ago. I mean, I play a game a lot.
Wow.
And it's the only battle royale. Well, I guess that's not true. I kind of got really into H1Z1 there for a little while. That one kind of hooked me for a little bit, but it was short lived. It was like a flash in the pan kind of thing. I was really into it, and then I kind of just fell away. This has been the first one that's grabbed me and held me for at least a couple of months.
So I find with a lot of the battle royale games, I try them, but it's like I get hooked as long as I got friends that are kind of playing it. And then if they kind of like disappear, then I just kind of like, I got other stuff. But has this been a game you'd say like you can play even without friends? Like you felt like it's been the pull's that strong for you?
I would say that the majority of the time that I've played the game, I've played alone. And solo queued. Yeah, but that's kind of the way that it was for me with Call of Duty as well. Like I had a core group of friends that I would play, which the reason I kind of equate it with Call of Duty is because it's made by Respawn, which is people who broke off from Infinity War that made Call of Duty. So it feels like Titanfall. It feels like Call of Duty. It feels really good to play. And back in the day when I played Call of Duty a ton, I had a core group of friends that I would play with, but they lived on different sides of the country and things, so it wasn't always us able to coordinate. So I played a lot solo. So I'm just kind of used to doing that. It doesn't bother me to jump into a team of 6 against another 6, which that's not what how Call of Duty would be most of the time, like Team Deathmatch or Domination or any of those. And one of my favorite games to play in the Call of Duty days was Search and Destroy. And Battle Royale always kind of gave me a little bit of that feel of Search and Destroy, but I just didn't really care for any of them. This one with the first person and the movement and the weapons, the way that they handle and they feel good, the ping system, all that stuff, everything that they've brought to the table, I've enjoyed. That's not to say it's perfect. There's been some definite criticisms of the game, and I think that a lot of them are warranted. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of people that are way too hard on it, considering that it's only been around for like 4 months now, I think, or 5 months maybe. Like, it's done a lot of really good stuff, and I still greatly enjoy playing the game. And I think a lot of other people do. I mean, there's a lot of doom and gloom when you read on the internet. I have no problem ever getting into a queue. Always there's tons of people playing. So
yeah, don't believe the internet, man.
Yeah. And look, I know Fortnite's like the biggest thing in the world. I tried Fortnite. Fortnite just doesn't work for me. I get it. Everybody loves it. Awesome. And they support their game really great. And I do think that they kind of set the standard for Battle Royale support. Yeah. Definitely makes sense. It's just not my bag. For my money, Apex Legends is the best one out there at the moment. So
when you play single player, do you play with a headset or do you just ping?
I do play with a headset. 9 times out of 10, I'm in a party. If I see that the other players have mics and they're moving, I'll switch party chat over to game chat just to make sure it's not like a music playing, that's what I'm hearing, and they're just not actually chatting on the mic. If there's people chatting, I will jump in and kind of try to coordinate with them a little bit, but the majority of the time, I just rely on the ping system because it's so good. Yeah. And if someone's going to do their own thing, they're going to do their own thing, whether you're chatting with them or not.
Yeah.
But I just wait because a lot of times there won't be mic icons, or if they are, they'll be moving. If they're moving a lot or constantly all the time, I know I'm going to flip over and this guy's just like listening to music or somebody talking in the background, and I'll flip over and sure enough, that's what they're doing. So I just leave my mic muted and go back to listen to whatever the heck I want. But I've been playing it. I play at weird times, which is why I end up having to solo queue a bunch. I'm not always playing in like prime time. But when I am, I usually will try to. You can definitely coordinate better when you're chatting with people, but that's just kind of the way that it's always been for me. I'm good figuring out, and if I need to try to carry, I'll do my best to try to carry.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to give it a try. Like I said, I've got it downloaded, but part of my problem is right now is that I only have the one PS4 anymore. I used to have 2. I had one on the downstairs TV and then one on my bedroom TV. So I could literally say, hey, I'm going to play downstairs. Then my wife would say, hey, the kids and I want to watch something on the big TV. And I say, sure. And I could just move upstairs and I could continue playing, or vice versa. I'd be playing upstairs. She'd say she wants to go to bed. I'd say, yeah, I'm not done playing, whatever. And I'd move downstairs. But a number of months ago, I sold both my PS4s and I traded them in and got a PS4 Pro because one of them was having some issues with the heat sink and the fan.
Yeah.
And I got a really good steal on the Red Dead Redemption 2 PS4 Pro bundle because it has the quieter fan. It had some improved hardware. even though I haven't played Red Dead Redemption 2 yet. But my problem's been is now that I only have one of them, this is the main TV. The kids want to watch stuff, and so it's been a lot of, I can't play my stuff until it's like late at night, or I have to play games with the kids. And so lately we've been working through the Kingdom Hearts series. We finished the first game. Now we're into the second game, and I'm really slowing down my interest in playing because it's just a lot of talking and a lot less gameplay.
So I hear.
And so, but this is the second game though. So I hear Gabe talking about the third game, and I'm just like, do I want to go spend money on that? And my wife and my kids want to finish 2 so we can get to 3, and I'm like, I've got Spider-Man that I haven't started yet that I want to get to. You know, I've got Red Dead Redemption 2 in there. I've got things like Apex that I want to try. And then there's a whole slew of new things that are coming out we're going to talk about tonight that I'm going to want to get to. So
I'll say one thing that I've found for myself, because I had a buddy who did this, and I never really thought I'd be this guy. I always thought of myself as I have an office that doubles as my game room. You can see my TV's right over there back behind me. And I usually would play there. But then once I got to the point where like I would stream occasionally and then record stuff for the Made of the Games YouTube channel and whatnot, I just got used to playing on a computer monitor. And mine, I'm just using an old like Apple Cinema display. Like it's 1200 resolution, and then I think it caps out at 60 frames per second, which is fine for most games that I'm playing. I actually will play there 9 times out of 10. I actually just moved it back to my TV last week to play the Overwatch stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, HDR really is good because this screen doesn't have HDR. But I mean, it takes me a day or two to get used to being on that bigger screen again, because once it's small and tight, it feels more precise to me. I don't know what it is. It might just be placebo kind of thing. But I mean, if you wanted to move the PS4 Pro, which I don't know if you need it for like the TV stuff that you're watching or whatever, but that might be an avenue to go.
occasionally.
Yeah, I mean, it might be worth giving it a shot, hooking up to a computer monitor if you got a setup that kind of could work with that.
That's the other problem. I mean, maybe you can see it, but like I'm here in my living room. Mm-hmm. This is like where we have our computer, and so unfortunately, it's just this house isn't. When we bought the house, it was like, hey, it checks off a number of things that we need in a house, not necessarily all of our wants. Mm-hmm. And the market's like sky high right now. People in our neighborhood are selling their homes for astronomical prices and getting them. And I almost want to do that because, hey, you know, make a lot of money. But it's a market right now where it's like sell high, buy high. So it doesn't make a lot of sense either. Yeah. But that is something though, Chris, that's on my like wish list of like the next house. I want an office that I can record a podcast in or do work in, and I can game in that's separate from everything else. You know, I want a man cave. I just want to disappear sometimes. And,
I hear you.
You know, that's that. But other than that, though, my wife and I have been watching, Breed and I have been watching season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. And we kind of try to watch something together. Usually it's like comedy, like 30 Rock we've been watching. But sometimes we try to watch a series together so we have a little bit of time together, because it seems like, you know, come home after work and some exercising and then time with the kids and then the bedtime routine and then dinner and all that. Like it gets to be, you know, the day's over, and like we found like we don't have time to sit down together. And so she's not much of a gamer except for like some, you know, match 3 games on her cell phone. And that's not really, you know, interactive for the two of us. So we watched a little bit of TV. And I've been enjoying Star Trek Season 2 on the Discovery. But I'm really looking forward to like 2 weeks from now, man. Stranger Things, the 3rd season's going to come out.
Holy smokes, 2 weeks, man.
Yeah, it's like July 4th. So we're like 2.5, 3 weeks away, yeah.
Holiday weekend.
Yeah, just in time to sit by and who needs fireworks, right?
Exactly.
Anyway, that's what's going on. Oh, I did have, Chris, so the wind you were talking about, we got a bunch of wind here. And on Saturday, I had to go to a motorcycle club event. And just as I'm getting on my motorcycle and I'm backing out of the garage, I noticed that we have this like arching trellis that like leads into our backyard. And it's got all this kind of wisteria ivy that's kind of grown up in it. And it's kind of like this tree thing that's kind of all intertwined. But it was knocked over because we'd had really strong winds, and it literally like ripped part of it out of the ground, knocked it off the fence. And so I had to spend part of my day Saturday when I got back with the chainsaw, chopping that thing up and getting it, getting it into the truck so I could take it to the dump. And so I don't know what's going on, but man, we got some wind here. You got some wind there. Patrick's getting, weather over in Florida. Apparently just, the country had a, big gush of wind go across it or something.
Yeah, it's nuts.
But thankfully mine was like a little thing, like no power outages,
Yeah.
nothing, just, a little bit of damage to something that we were going to have to replace anyway. Not that big of a deal, but nothing life-threatening, no red flags,
good.
no people, no people being pulled under on the undertow or anything like that.
That's good.
But speaking of murdering and dying, what do you guys say we should kill some Bothans and we get to some rebel intelligence?
Let's do it.
I always have to let you know, many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Rest in peace, you Bothans.
All right, we're into Rebel Intelligence. Patrick, you're going to kick us off. What do you have for me this week?
Okay, so the first story that I have is... Now, Spencer, you got some kids, right?
I've got 2 kids.
And I got 2 kids as well.
Wait, I love how you're like, you've got some kids. I'm like, you met them. We were on vacation together. Yes, Patrick, I have 2 children.
Yes, so we are probably going to be seeing this movie called Frozen 2. The new trailer just dropped, with Idina Menzel and Kristen Bell. And this it's actually a trailer. The one that came out, I don't know, was it a couple months ago? It was a teaser, kind of like, hey, this new movie, Frozen 2, is going to be coming out. Get you kind of hyped for it. So this new trailer gave a little bit of a story of what's going to happen in this movie. And it is, I'm assuming, now if you watch the trailer, it is about Anna and Elsa going out north, I believe, to find out the truth. And what that truth is that I don't know if that means they're going to find out the truth about what happened to their parents or find out the truth of how she got her powers. So it'll be interesting, and I'm definitely going to have to see it. I got a 9-year-old girl, so she's going to be wanting to see this one.
So what's interesting to me about kind of you're talking about your 9-year-old daughter. It's like, I know that the first Frozen movie was like huge with girls. However, I think it's just huge with kids in general. Yeah. Because like my boys loved that movie and made us watch it about a gazillion times in a row. And I don't feel like that's like this is a predominantly girl movie versus a boy movie, which I feel like they used to, that separation was stronger, longer ago, years ago. Less so now because, Disney wants to get money from as many people as possible. Sure. Good for them, their business. Right. But I think that this new movie is interesting because the way they showed it in the little trailer for it makes it seem like not only are they going to be trying to figure out where Anna and Elsa are going and how she got her powers, but also like there's some sort of existential crisis, some sort of thing that's going to happen that only she's going to be able to stop or save the world from or whatever, but there could be a cost associated with it. Like they kind of hit little notes of that in the trailer, and I just thought that seemed like a very adult type of concept for what's considered to be a children's movie.
Yeah, and Disney does that. I mean, they throw in adult themes for the adults, and they throw in those flashes for the kids, and Disney likes to do that. They do that with a lot of their movies.
So, Chris, I know you're not a big movie guy in the theater. Mm-hmm. Do you end up seeing a lot of the Disney movies when they eventually make it over to streaming services and whatnot?
Yeah, I try to, especially if they're already tied to a service that I pay for, which, I pay for Netflix and we have Amazon Prime, and we do plan to get Disney Plus whenever it drops. I mean, there's
November 11th.
At least, at the very least, the first year, I mean, being $70, because I don't know if they're going to stick at that price, but you just pay $70, you have a year of it. It's like, man, that's PS Plus or Xbox Live, essentially. It's like, I can easily do that. So I will be watching a heck of a lot more, all the ones that I didn't get to see, because there's still a bunch of them I haven't seen. I haven't seen Wreck-It Ralph 2. I haven't seen a lot of different movies that are tied in with their stuff. That's a Disney one, right? I'm not confusing myself, am I? Okay, yes. Yeah. So I will definitely see it at some point. And I kind of to agree with what you guys were talking about. I do think that it's, like, I have nephews, and I know
Yep.
other people that have little boys, that they'll be into it too. I think Disney just knows how to hook not just kids, but also adult. Of course, the kid in all of us, they tend to like Disney stuff. And like Patrick was saying, they do kind of tie in adult themes that you would pick up on that like a child's maybe not necessarily going to grasp at right away. They're just good at making something that everybody can be interested in. So I kind of agree with you guys that it may have seemed more like, because, when it's Halloween, you're going to dress up as the princess. That's what you're going to do. That you just assume like, that's a girl's movie. But it's really not. It's kind of universal in that sense.
Yeah, I noticed like as my kids are getting a little older, like they just don't care. Like when I was their age, I already knew like I want to watch G.I. Joe's because that's a cool boy cartoon. I don't want to watch She-Ra. I'm going to watch He-Man. Like I knew there was like that division. And my kids turn on like the Disney Now, which, is kind of like the Disney, everything's kind of in one place for Disney Junior, Disney, and Disney XD. And they'll watch like Sophia the First or Vampirina. And then they'll go and watch Mickey Mouse Club or, Mickey Mouse Mouseketeer Racers or whatever it's called. And then like they'll watch all sorts of stuff. They just don't care. Whatever's interesting and exciting and engaging, they watch.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, great.
Yeah.
So, but speaking of children and speaking of kids, every time I talk about Steven Spielberg, it makes me think of my childhood because I feel like my childhood was tied to like Steven Spielberg movies, right? Like E.T. for me is like that quintessential like childhood movie for me. I watched as a kid. It's about kids. Like Steven Spielberg's known for working with children a lot. But now he's doing something different. He is wanting to do basically what's kind of like a horror show, but he wants to do something that hasn't been done before. He's working with Jeffrey Katzenberger on this new streaming service called Quibi, which stands for Quick Bites.
Get out of here with that.
Yeah, I was like, the name, first of all, is just, it's a little rough. But his idea, though, is that he's going to create like this horror series, but you're only going to be able to get it in like these like maybe 10 or 15 minute kind of like little mini episodes, but then they'll all stack up and equal like a full movie when you've seen them all. But here's the catch. You can only watch them like after midnight or after the sun goes down. This new service that's having to be created basically will know, according to your phone, when the sun sets based on, your location and your GPS. It'll figure out, oh, hey, now it's dark. Now your show is available to watch. You can only watch it when it's dark and when it's like late at night, because he's trying to do this thing where he's doing this horror thing and he wants it so you're going to be watching it in this kind of like scary environment, but like that technology doesn't exist. So he's like having to leverage, Katzenberger to help him come up with this streaming service that will do that. Just first glance, Chris, you hear something like this. Where does your mind go? Like, what are you thinking about when you hear that?
Well, the first thing that I think, even though there are ways around it, is this only going to be a service that's available on phones? Like, is it going to be on a Roku or an Apple TV? I mean, because I know through IP and all that kind of stuff, you can kind of determine what the time is, but they don't have GPS.
They haven't said yet.
That's interesting.
But they specifically mentioned phones. But I'm guessing though with IP, they're going to be able to say, hey, this person's at this location and whatnot. But I mean,
I don't take my first initial gut thing is like, oh, that's, kind of cool, but at the same time, like, do we really need another gimmick? But I'm fine. You're getting to the point where everything under the sun has been done. Everything, nothing is really new anymore. So if you find something that, hey, this aspect or this thing has not really been done again or not been done before, then yeah, go for it. Why not? Just see if it works. I mean, one thing that I will say, I feel like most people who are into creepy, horror-ish kind of stuff, they want to watch it in the dark anyways. So they're going to put themselves in a dark space. So if you just have to, if you're forced to have to do it at night, well, I'm sure that adds to the ambiance of the whole thing and the way that you're doing it. I can only see how that could enhance. I mean, will it be a little bit annoying if like you work nights and you can only watch during the day? It's like, man, I'm out of luck because I can't watch this. Yeah. But I mean, majority of people, I don't think it's going to affect them that way fortunately for their service anyway. So go for it. Give it a shot.
My initial impression, though, was like the idea of another streaming service. Like, we're going to get to this point where
Yes.
people are just going to start rebelling because
I'm
there's just way
actually
too much.
surprised that it hasn't started yet. In the gaming space, oh my gosh.
It's going to happen fast.
It's got to be coming soon because
Yeah.
there's no way that everybody's going to be able to pay for all these streaming services. I agree.
So Patrick, let me hit you up with these names and tell me what you think. These are the people that have signed on already to do stuff with this Quibi. Guillermo del Toro, Sam Raimi, Doug Lima, Steven Soderbergh, Catherine Hardwicke, Lawrence Fishburne, Antoine Fuqua, and Anna Kendrick. Those are all people that have agreed to make content or be involved. And it's also raised $1 billion and counting.
What? Raised? Was this a Kickstarter?
I don't know that's a Kickstarter, but it's probably venture capitalist money.
Okay, well, that seems like a lot of money raised for. And you said earlier that this technology it doesn't even exist yet.
Right, they're developing it right now.
It seems like a lot of money to put behind, like Chris said, a gimmick. For you can only watch it during certain hours, like like me, like I'm a night owl, and I'm usually up past midnight anyways. But there's a lot of people out there like once 10 o'clock hits, it's time for bed. Like
so just to clarify though, that's only Steven Spielberg's show. There's going to be the after midnight. The other stuff will be just available in short bites, normal times throughout the day.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant this entire Quibi. I don't even know if I want to say Quibi anymore. But
Quibi.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that makes a little bit more sense because some people are like, hey, the sun goes down a little bit earlier than some other people. Some
Right.
people have daylight, 20 hours a day, in certain parts of the world. So
Yeah, poor Alaska.
yeah, I know Alaska.
They don't even have internet. They can't stream. No,
They'll never get Quibi up there. Okay, Patrick, what else do you got for me?
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go back to Kristen Bell because apparently she's one of my favorite actresses. But there's another story that came out with her. As she stars in the TV show The Good Place.
Yes.
And The Good Place, my wife and I, that's one of the shows that we watch on a weekly basis. We love that show. It was one of those shows like when they do their like trailers for new shows coming out like every year during that time. We watch all those trailers, and when that show that trailer came out, we're like, that seems like a show we'd like, and we absolutely love the show. Yeah. And the third season just ended, and they just announced that the season of the series is going to end after season 4. So they only got one more season left, and I'm okay with that. In season 3, it felt like they were like stretching the storylines thin
just a little, yeah,
to make it last a little bit longer. Like when shows do that, you can tell when they're like just like some episodes are just like, what in the world just happened? Why did we even watch the last 3 episodes kind of thing?
Right.
So I'm okay. That was me with Lost. Like Lost should have been a 3 or 4 season series, but it went on for 42 seasons or however long it was. It's way too long. But yeah, like season 4 is gonna end, or is gonna be the last season for Good Place, and I'm totally okay with that. They really need to end series is like it shouldn't be most TV shows should not be longer than 8 seasons. Like 8 seasons I feel like is pretty long unless you're like Game of Thrones, when you're like these huge books and there's a lot of backstory that you have to get through. I understand that. Or like the Harry Potter, they made 8 movies or however many it was. I get it. But some just like wear out their welcome.
It's like The Big Bang. Like The Big Bang just finished, and it was like their 11th season, and I felt like they had like a good 5 or 6 seasons at the beginning that were fairly funny, but then you get to a place where it's like, oh, now we're kind of done with storytelling and character development, so let's add in some marriages, and then we can toss in some babies, and we can toss in some, adopt a kid, that sort of thing in shows. And every time you see that, that's always the point to me where I know the show's going to change because they need to infuse some new lifeblood because the writers are feeling this is stale.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that they're not going to, make 9 seasons of The Good Place. I love that show. Brita and I really do enjoy it, but I don't want to see it get old and tired. I want to enjoy it while it's still funny and not drag it out.
Yeah, and I mean, like some shows that we watch, I mean, we'll stop watching after like the third season because it just starts to get stale, like you said, because it's like, all right, then we're going through the same storylines, we're going through the same tropes, like it's not funny anymore, it's not interesting anymore. Let's just end the seasons or end the series.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see that they actually have like, hey, they will only have like 13 more episodes probably of this series.
Yeah.
And then they're done. So it's like it's better to do that than have them cancel the show like in mid-season 5 or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I hear you. All right, here's the last thing I have because we got a big discussion coming up, so I don't want to belabor it too much, but the Uncharted game series is one of my favorite series in recent memory, and we know that just a little while ago, they've announced officially that Tom Holland is going to be playing Nathan Drake in the upcoming Uncharted movie. There's lots of speculation. Chris, is he going to be playing a young Drake, or is he going to be playing kind of the veteran Drake that we're used to? What's your thoughts?
I mean, I hope it's a young one because he just doesn't. He doesn't.
Because he looks like a kid?
Yeah, I mean, he just looks a little too young to be playing Drake from Uncharted 3 or 2 or 3. That just...
Yeah.
It doesn't feel right, but at the same time, I mean, video game movies, there's not been the home run. So it's like, I'm willing to at least give it a shot regardless of how it goes. Even if they're like, oh, this is basically, him in the older times and he's an older Drake. And it's Tom Holland's like, I'll give it a shot. Why not? I mean, I'm willing to see how it goes at least.
I'm hoping this is like early 20s Drake, and maybe, this is pre, the first Uncharted game.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But what is interesting is they have announced that December of 2020 is going to be the release date for the upcoming Uncharted movie. Mm-hmm. So we still got a little bit of time. We're about, maybe 18 months or so out until the movie. But this is, to me, the perfect time now where you're going to release information, right? We know it's Tom Holland. We know a release date. I anticipate over the next few months, we're going to get some more details on who's going to be playing some of the other characters, who's going to be directing, and they're going to slowly kind of build that information. And then they're going to have to start hitting that hype train hard, coming with trailers and whatnot about 9 months out. Not a lot of detail around here. It's just interesting because Tom Holland obviously is playing Spider-Man, so he's really popular right now.
Yeah.
And everyone knows him.
Mm-hmm.
And we know he's going to be playing Drake. And so there's a lot of questions out there. I hope it's younger Drake. If it's going to be older Drake, I think the public is going to have a real hard time of separating him from Peter Parker right now.
Yeah.
Just because he's been playing Peter Parker in almost everything he's been doing for like the last 5 years.
Well, not only that, I mean, it would make sense if he's playing a younger Drake, obviously because he looks younger. But so we know Uncharted because we're gamers. Yep. But your average Joe that doesn't play games or whatever, maybe they've seen a poster, but they don't know who Nathan Drake is. So does it make sense to make a movie based on the younger Drake? Or would it make sense to have your first movie, assuming that they're hoping it does well to where they're going to make a couple of them? Would you want to start your first one where it's like somewhere in the thick of things, like around the time frame of like Uncharted 2? Does it make more sense to go that route or to start at the beginning and start with a young Drake and then see him go, assuming it continues on? I don't know. I don't know what would be the right way to go. I mean, it's kind of a fresh start because I don't think they're going to be copying the game in terms of the narrative. I think they're going to have their own kind of story just that feels like Nathan Drake, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm hoping they have their own spin on it, their own storyline. I don't want them to go beat for beat for, Uncharted 1, 2, or 3, kind of thing. But with Tom Holland being cast as Nathan Drake, I feel like this is more of an origin story. It's not going to be where, a 30-year-old, a 35-year-old Nathan Drake, where he's in the middle, he's already done all of these treasure hunts and gotten all these treasures and become the Nathan Drake that he is. So this, with Tom Holland, he's young. He looks young. And spoilers, there was a part in Uncharted 3 where they went back to when Nathan Drake was young and where he met Sully. So I think it's going to be more along the lines of that, of him meeting Sully and learning what Sully has done and Sully teaching him, the certain things, or it's gonna be like, it's not gonna be the Uncharted movie that I want it to be. The Uncharted movie that I want it to be is the fan film that they made with who was it?
Nathan Fillion.
Nathan Fillion. Yeah.
Yes.
That was 15 minutes of just awesomeness.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that I want. But I can't without seeing any trailers or knowing any details about it. These movie casters have proved me wrong. They've done it with Heath Ledger with the Joker. Like when he was cast as Joker, everyone's like, "Who the heck is this? Why do we want this guy's from 10 Things I Hate About You?" Or whatever it was. It's like, this shouldn't be Joker, but he killed it.
Yeah.
So could Tom Holland do it? Maybe.
Chris, I think you bring up a good point, though. Is this movie going to be for gamers, or is this movie going to be for people that aren't, big gamers? Because they've got to try to hook a bigger audience, especially if they are hoping to make multiple movies in this kind of world, in this franchise. And realistically, Uncharted is a more modern day version of Indiana Jones. I mean, that's really what it is at the heart of it. As an archaeologist, a treasure hunter, going around the world looking for things, looking into, mysteries and the occult and whatever. And I think that if they tell a unique story and they start him young, and it kind of is an origin story of sorts, if it does well, then they have room to grow. But if they start it like somewhere around, like you said, like Uncharted 2, and it doesn't do well, all that's going to do is it's going to just make a lot of video game fans really angry.
Yeah.
And so I hope it's a little bit younger maybe, and that they're going to kind of go for a more wider audience. Because if I'm just being perfectly honest, the Uncharted games are great. If I want those stories and I want them in their pure form, I'm just going to go back and play them again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and what if they pull a little rope-a-dope on us and Tom Holland is only in it for 5 minutes, kind of like a National Treasure, where it starts off with him a kid, and all of a sudden he's this treasure hunter. They probably won't do that.
And then it's Nathan Fillion.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I wouldn't complain.
Yeah.
I wouldn't complain at all. All right, well, that's all we've got for Rebel Intelligence. So let's move on. Let's answer the questions from the Super Friends, or the answers from the Super Friends from last week. So I asked the question, what are you looking forward to in E3? And we got some answers. So we'll kind of go through them here real quickly. We're going to go where we always start, which is over on our email, which is fortofnerd@gmail.com. And I've got Peter Christensen. He says, "Dear nerds, for those interested in getting better at grilling and barbecue, I recommend the website AmazingRibs.com. The author, Meathead, yes, that is his name, has an encyclopedia and knowledge of meat, cooking techniques, gear, etc. He also has a book that covers a lot of the same material." He's definitely hitting me back because I've been really big into grilling and barbecue the last year and a half, and I'm going to look that up. Thank you, Patrick. He says, "More fun facts about Pixar. George Lucas sold it to raise money for his divorce, and Steve Jobs bought it because he'd been forced out of Apple and needed something to do. Creativity Inc. by Pixar co-founder Ed Catmull is one of the best books I've ever read." Okay, he says, "Spencer, I doubt Apple will sell very many Mac Pros for only $6,000. It's not for normal people. If your job doesn't already include significant workarounds for the limitations on the most expensive computer you can afford, then this isn't for you. In the demo, they showed audio editing of 1,000 tracks or video editing with 3 simultaneous streams of 8K video. Software developers are a big market for Apple's high-end computers, and they didn't even bother showing how the Mac Pro would help that. The iMac Pro is the computer for the most demanding normal people. Companies buying the new Mac Pro will probably spec it up to 20K plus with 20K worth of monitors as well." I get that, Peter. I get it. I'm just saying that it's just an astronomical price tag for a computer, and it looks ugly. That cheese grater just bad. Just bad. He goes on to say, "My family watched season 1 of Cobra Kai this weekend, and boy, was it great. We started on Saturday afternoon and finished all 10 episodes by Sunday morning. When I say we, I mean my 11-year-old, my 13-year-old daughters as well. Note to past me, check content warnings first. TV 14 can get pretty spicy. The rough content also gave it credibility to my kids who recognized a lot more of the real high school experience versus the squeaky clean portrayals on the other shows. It had the MCU mix of fun, tension, action, and well-timed humor. It was about the most blatant fan service I've ever seen, and I loved it. Cobra Kai and Creed are 2 remakes no one was asking for that nevertheless turned out fantastic. It's a shining ray of hope for all the tired nostalgia properties dreaming of a new life. Shout out to How I Met Your Mother for seeing the magic in these 2 characters and actors. And then he says, and as usual, I have no comments about video game stuff. Cheers, Peter Christensen. Peter's not a gamer, but if you guys have not watched Cobra Kai, or Super Friends, if you're listening to this and you have not watched Cobra Kai, I listen to what Peter just said and listen to what I'm saying. I highly recommend it. It is blatant nostalgia, but it does do it in such a good way that like you don't even mind the fact that it's blatant nostalgia and that they're trying to hook you with that because it works and it just draws you in. Definitely worth a watch. Let's jump over to Twitter. We didn't have anything on Facebook, so we don't need to go there. Twitter, Tim Paulin at tpaulin20 says, Square's Avengers game, Microsoft exclusives, and while I doubt we'll find out what Rocksteady is working on. So Tim, you'll have to find out just a little bit longer here, and we'll tell you if any of that came true. Rich Turpin at TurpinRich says, info from Took Games on the new D&D game. Not talking about Baldur's Gate 3, which I'm very excited about. And I don't know that I saw anything on the D&D game. Or much on the Baldur's Gate. But we were kind of short on answers this week, and that's okay because we got a lot to go on to. But Super Friends, thank you so much, Peter, Tim, and Rich for writing in this week. And once again, this is always one of my favorite parts. Continue to send in your answers, and I'll continue to read them. Okay, so I was going to say Chris and then throw it over to you, but I'm not going to do that. So, Super Friends, you know the routine. Go on iTunes, give us a rating, subscribe, like, tell your friends. As it's been suggested from Delvin Cox and multiple other guests, steal your friend's phone and subscribe to the podcast on their phone. It doesn't hurt. Listen, no children are being harmed when you do that. No puppies are going to die. You'll be fine. But like I say, if you enjoy the podcast, tell a friend about it. Tell 2 friends. So-and-so, thank you much. All right, guys, this is the thing I've been waiting for days to talk about. So I want to talk about E3. Mm-hmm. We had all the big press conferences, but I figure this isn't the podcast where we're going to go into like super, huge details. So I figure what we can do is we can just kind of talk about our kind of, top 3 things from each press conference. We'll go down and just kind of talk about what we thought were the big highlights or things we enjoyed. So Chris, I'm going to start with you here. Let's go into the EA press conference. What were some of your big takeaways from the EA press conference?
I am excited for the new Star Wars video game from Respawn. Obviously, they are as well are very excited about that. That's why they kicked off the show with it. And they had
like 15 minutes of coverage of that thing too, like gameplay.
Yeah, I don't think it looks all that great personally, and I feel like I'm in the minority there. Overall, like the gameplay seems fine.
You're saying visually?
Yeah, visually there were some things with it. Let me put it this way: it doesn't look bad. And it did say, if I remember right, right when they started that gameplay, it said something like alpha footage or pre-alpha footage or something like that. It said some little phrase there to let you know, like, oh, this isn't the final product. This is just something to show you. But anytime, like when it got to Saul Guerrera, and I forget the actual main protagonist's name, but when he would be there and it would be like a kind of a cutscene them talking, the faces just didn't look right to me. They didn't animate right. And that's obviously all stuff that can be cleaned up. When just the moment-to-moment gameplay, I thought it all looked fine and it looked fluid and it looked really cool. I like whoever the new guys are for the Empire that had the weird bow staffs with the purple stuff on the ends of it, and he was like fighting the Jedi guy. All that looks fine. So I'm excited about that. It just needs a little tweaking, and I think that they'll get there fine. And honestly, kind of because I alluded to it earlier, I was really excited about seeing what was up for Apex Legends. I wanted to know about Season 2. I wanted to know not just when it was going to start and what might be involved, but how they were going to change it, because the Season 1 Battle Pass was a little lackluster. I burned all the way through it, and it was just like, yeah, there's really not much in here that I really want to have. I just did it to have it because I was going to be playing it anyways. So those are really the two things that I was the most interested in. I'm not huge on the sports stuff, sports gaming. Like I like to watch sports and everything, but on the gaming side, man, when I was younger, like in the SNES days, I would totally play like NBA Live and Madden and stuff like that. But I just don't care that much anymore.
Yeah,
these days, even though it looks amazing, like I'll look at it and be like, man, that looks like it'd be fun. I don't really want to buy that though. So none of that stuff really did a whole lot for me. It was mainly the first two that they kicked off with were what was my main interest in the EA show.
I agree with you though on the Star Wars one. Like I love Star Wars. Like that's my wheelhouse. But I did agree. Like every time they did like the close up of Saw Gerrera, I kind of went, yeah, it just didn't look right.
Something was off.
And,
yeah, it looks like they were like missing like a texture or something.
Yeah, he had almost like a fuzzy look, like it wasn't like focused in. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but that's kind of how I felt. I don't know. It's one that I know I'm gonna get, and I got actually a text message from my brother-in-law, who's not a big gamer, and he says, "Yeah, so I think I'm gonna have to buy a PS4 just for this Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order." I was like, "There you go, yeah," but I hope it gets cleaned up.
I'm sure it will.
And I think it will. I mean, this was a pre-alpha footage, like with it being, 5 months away, I thought the footage or the visual aspect would have been a little bit better. But I don't know when they put that footage together for them to show. It could have been a couple months ago that they put that together, and they're still working on the game. So, but yeah, I mean, like I agree with you guys. It just looked a little off when it got into the gameplay. It looked really nice. It felt like the action adventure, third person Uncharted kind of feel, where it goes into action, then it goes to a cutscene. So you get a lot of a story there. But one of the things that stood out to me was the random double jump. Like I've never seen anybody in the Star Wars universe just do a double jump.
And running on the wall?
What?
Yeah. I kind of went, this looks kind of like Uncharted with lightsabers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was strange. Like when they ran across the wall, I'm like, well, yep, that's Respawn. That's Titanfall. That's Apex Legends right there, kind of thing. But overall, I mean, like it was good. Like they didn't like touch on it too much. But there was like some RPG elements to it where you can like upgrade your lightsaber, upgrade your skills. I mean, like let's talk about the BD-1. I mean, that's that droid that just like sits on your back helping you out. So that was kind of cool, like to see a droid that's not just like an R2D2 that just
comedy relief,
like rolls around. I mean, this droid is like smart and just sitting on your back and helping you out, opening doors and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see that as well.
Yeah. What about you, Patrick? What else stood out from the EA press conference for you?
Yeah, like Chris said, the first two, Jedi, and then the Apex Legends. I'm really looking forward to Season 2. Season 1, for me, I mean, there wasn't a lot of new, updates to keep me coming back as much as I wanted to. And there was like, with Season 1, it took forever to open up these Apex packs. And these Apex packs are pretty much like loot boxes, once you open them, there's like random drops. You get 3 different things. Could be rare, could be legendary. But it was few and far between. Like the first like 20 levels, I mean, you would get one like almost every level. But once you get past that, it was like almost every 5-10 levels, you would get another Apex pack. So they're fixing it in Season 2 to where you're going to be able to get, like level up faster. You'll be able to get, like gear and skills and things like that faster. So I'm really looking forward to that because they're adding guns, they're adding ranked modes. I don't know what that's going to look like. I'll probably be in like the lowest tier. I'll be having fun, but whatever. But yeah, and then unlike you guys, I am a huge Madden fan. Like I've bought Madden every year since I can't even remember. I think the first football game I might have bought was Joe Montana for Sega Genesis. But other than that, Madden. So I'm interested. Like every year, just like a very incremental upgrades. They add something. Just they add animation. They'll add extra plays to the playbook. Just something incrementally that's going to bring me back. One of the biggest things about this one is in the past two they've had this story mode, and this year they've gone away from those two story modes that they'd done previously, and you'll be able to create a quarterback, put them on one of 10 different colleges, go through a national championship, go through the combine, go through the draft,
Really?
and then get drafted by the NFL. So it's called a Face of the Franchise, and if you've ever played any of the NBA 2K games, it's kind of like that, where you're like doing street ball, and then you go through the draft, and then there's like cut scenes in between games. You talk to your agent and things like that. So it adds something new that's never been done in Madden. So I'll be interested to see how all that plays out. They didn't really talk too much about it, other than you make a guy, you go through into the NFL, and then what happens into the NFL, they're very vague on it. But I mean, it's coming out in 2 months, so don't have to wait too long for that.
That kind of reminds me of the old EA Fight Night games, where you were a boxer and you would start like as an amateur and have to kind of fight your way up through the amateur ranks in order to then jump over to the pros, and like you had a time when you were going to do that, and there was kind of a story associated with that, and like shady dealers and promoters and whatever, and kind of, I mean, it's EA, right? I mean, that's kind of like how do you find a story in a game, right?
Yeah,
like
so
that in a sports game.
It'll be cool. And one new feature that they added this year is kind of like NBA Jam. You know how you make 2 shots, you're heating up, you make your third shot, and you're on fire. They've added those kind of things to this game. So certain players, in the past they were like impact players, like the best players in your team are impact players, and this year those impact players are now X Factor players, to where like one of the quarterbacks that they showed, like they have superstar abilities. There's like passive abilities that are always on. So like the Pat Mahomes, the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, he's one of those scrambling quarterbacks. So he's got the abilities to like shed tackles behind the line, things like that. And then there are goals for each of these X factors. So one of his goals is you have to throw 4 passes of 30 plus yards or more without an incomplete pass, and then he gets in the zone. And what that means is he can throw the ball 80 yards. He can, and when he is scrambling, he can have perfect accuracy. Because like when you're running to the right or running to the left, and you're trying to throw off your back foot, your accuracy is going to go down. So his ability is he's going to have perfect accuracy. So that's just like one of many different X factors, because there's on both sides of the ball. So that'll add another element to the game, because every Friday night my buddy comes over and we play about 3 games of Madden. It's just our couch co-op thing that we do just to hang out. And we've been doing that for 3 years, almost every Friday.
Oh, wow.
So we're pumped to have another Madden to play, because we play it all year round, whether it's football season or June. We're playing.
Wow.
So I'm looking forward to it.
That's cool. No, like I'm kind of like Chris. I haven't really been into sports games since I was younger. Plus, my brother used to whoop my trash in like Madden. And I remember it was literally like in September of 2006. I was at his house and I played my final game of Madden. He just destroyed me so much, and he was like, "Let's play another one." I'm like, "No, this isn't fun anymore." I'm like, "I just lose by like 40 points. Like it's not even competitive." And I put it down, and I've never touched it since. And I'm okay with that, because I got other stuff to do. But I will say,
Sims 4.
Yeah, exactly right. I got to be honest. The EA press conference for me was like the least of all the press conferences that I was like excited for. The Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order thing was the real one big thing for me. I went, "Ooh, I want this." The Apex stuff, I haven't played it yet. I mean, I know that's big in that world, and I figured you guys play that game, so you would probably talk about it. So I did try to find one other thing I thought looked interesting, And that's that Battlefield 5 is going to go back to the Pacific in their Chapter 5. So they're releasing a new chapter for the game, and they've got a whole bunch of new maps that are all kind of in the Pacific theater, which is something that I think they haven't done in a few games. And just visually, it looked really, really beautiful with all the blue water and the sand on the beaches and whatnot. I don't know that I would pick up Battlefield 5 at this point. It's just kind of not a game I'm going to spend a lot of time in, but it looked beautiful. And so like if you're into that kind of game and, you're playing that first person shooter where they're continuing to give you support, year after year after year, go get that. Like that new, chapter, that expansion looks amazing. So
Nice.
But that's all I had though on the EA. The EA stuff just kind of, it didn't click with me as much as some of the others. So let's move on to Ubisoft. Chris, what did you think of Ubisoft? What hit you?
The thing that stood out to me the most was the new Watch Dogs game, Watch Dogs Legion, because the previous two Watch Dogs were not something that really interested me. The very first one, I kind of had some interest in because we'd never seen, it was the first in the franchise and it was this new hype thing. Then it had all the whole like downgrade talk and everything. And I just kind of I was like, I'll wait till it goes on sale. And I never ended up picking it up. Watch Dogs 2 comes out. It's set in San Francisco. And it just, I don't know what it was, even because I like San Francisco as a city. You would have thought I'd have been like all down to run around and hack the place to death over there. But I just didn't really care. And so I was like, it's no big deal. But this one looks different. The fact that it's set in London. You're recruiting all of these different people, and you have access to all these different characters that you recruit to your I think it's called DedSec or something like that. I forget exactly.
Yeah.
And so you can switch between which ones you're playing at different points in time, as I understand it. And when you are playing as one, if that character dies, that character is dead. It is permanent there. It's permadeath. Now, of course, you have access to anybody else that you've recruited in part of your gang, if you will, or your group. So you can switch and play as these different people. But I'm assuming, and they kind of alluded to it to some extent at least, that different people will have different skills and be used for better things. So you're not going to want to lose your people. So you're going to still play it kind of safe, but you're going to use, because they all have different skills and things that they're better at and good at, you're going to do mission A with this person, and then you're going to do mission B with that person, and then if that person dies, well, now you no longer have the drone flying guy or whatever. You've got to recruit yet another one. That threw a whole little loop to it that I was like, okay, this is actually a little more interesting. So at the moment, that's the thing from the Ubisoft show that had me the most enticed. The other thing that I picked up on that just kind of surprised me because I wasn't expecting it, so it came out of left field for me, was a Division movie with Netflix.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, The Division, I played the first one, the demo, and just didn't really grab me. This one, I actually bought the Division 2. I kind of bought into the hype because a bunch of people like in the Married to the Games community and just on Twitter in general were like, oh, the Division 2. I got it. Just wasn't for me. It was one of those, I shouldn't have bought that because I knew that game's really not for me. But I always liked the idea of it, and it was just one of those things like, unfortunately, it's not clicking with me. Just is what it is. So when they said a Division movie, I was like, okay, now this is something I can get interested in. You throw that on the Netflix, I'm going to watch me a Division movie. So that
and
was
I think
totally
Jake
cool.
Gyllenhaal is associated with it, right?
Yeah, I think Jake Gyllenhaal is the protagonist, along with Jessica Chastain.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I mean, they got some people in it.
So those were the two things. So on the game side, Watch Dogs Legion, and then that just totally threw me for a loop. So it was a big surprise to me. So I was like, oh yeah, Division movie. I'm all about that.
I love the unexpected announcements at E3, and I wasn't expecting that either. I was like, okay, the Division 2, and they were showing some new DLC stuff. I'm like, yeah, because I was like you. I played the first one, and I liked the game, but you really needed to play with people to really kind of get the full experience. And then once, your group kind of peters out or whatever, it's kind of hard to pick back up on your own. So I didn't get to. I was like, I'm not spending $60 when it's brand new. And by the time it gets cheap enough that I would be willing to give it a try just to see it, people aren't going to be playing it. But the movie idea, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I'm all about it.
Anything else hit you from Ubisoft that you're into or you want to see?
No, I'm not really much for the Ghost Recon stuff. Rainbow Six Siege was one that I wanted, or Rainbow Six, Siege, and then now Quarantine, I think.
Quarantine,
I wanted to get into that game, but it was just like, at the time, I had too many multiplayer games. It's like, I just don't have room for them all.
Yep.
So even though always thought it looked really cool, I never really got into it, and so I'm not going to jump in now. I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll just blow up, and I'll be like, won't be able to resist, and I'll jump in there. But yeah, I would say Watch Dogs Legion was the biggest thing for me in the gaming side, and then that Division movie stuff just threw me for a loop.
What about you, Patrick?
Like Chris, the Watch Dogs Legion. I played the first one, and I loved it. I didn't take into all the hate on the internet. I actually liked it. Watch Dogs 2, even better. So I like the open world, like GTA style games. There's just something that there's some sort of satisfaction that I get when I'm able to jump in like any car, take on anything, and run and gun kind of thing. So this game really interests me, and being able to recruit anybody in the world to your DedSec team is just, it blows my mind. Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Like, how is this going to happen? Because in the demo that they showed on stage, when they had this old lady,
Helen.
just Helen, and you could see like she doesn't walk around like a 25-year-old. She walks around like an 85-year-old lady. And so she's trying to hop over like a little fence or whatever, and she's like rolling over it like an 85-year-old would do. I'm like, man, they put a lot of like care into this world, into the animations and things like that. And one of the cool things is when you're recruiting your team, you can recruit anyone. So if you wanted to recruit like 20 old ladies into your crew, I mean, you could, so
the Granny Brigade.
yeah. And like Chris said, like, this permadeath. So it's like, you got to be careful. If you're really attached to one of these characters that you've like skilled up and their abilities are up, if they die, I mean, they're gone, so that adds an extra element to it.
So Patrick, is your strategy going to be recruit a bunch of old people? That way, when you kill them, you don't feel bad because they've lived a good life.
I don't know how. I mean, like, they showed like all these, like, there was like a UFC fighter, or MMA fighter that you can. I mean, it was just like, it just blows my mind. And then they showed like a cutscene of you recruiting one. So like, they said that each one is going to have their own origin story. I'm like, how many voice actors have there been?
That's
like how many cutscenes? Like, like, how is this all gonna work? I'm just like, I can't even wrap my head around it. It just sounds so good. Plus, it's in London, and like the last London game that I really loved, and they don't do a lot of London games, other than I think Assassin's Creed might have been over there. Syndicate maybe, but it was like the Getaway back for PS1 or PS2. I loved that one. So going back over to London, and it's not like it's an American place like New York, San Francisco, Florida. Like all the normal Chicago, all the normal places that they like to go in these types of games. So to see it in London, a fresh place, fresh atmosphere, I'm excited for it. I'm really excited for that.
Nice.
And then one of the it's not the on the gaming front, but on the TV front, like Always Sunny in Philadelphia is one of my favorite shows of all time. And then so when Rob McElhenney came out and he said that he's making a comedy show about video games, like behind the scenes of making a video game,
developers, right?
Yeah, like it's making Mythic Quest, and like they didn't show too much about it other than Rob McElhenney is one of my favorites. Like he writes Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and it just gets me. It's like a live action Family Guy where none of it makes sense, none of it matters. One episode doesn't make sense to the next episode. They're all like cohesive. Yeah. They're not cohesive. Yeah. They're just like siloed into that episode. So I'm looking forward to it. I know it got a lot of hate on the internet. Like, what is this? Who cares about this? Apple Plus. It's like, well, maybe I might try Apple Plus just to watch this because one of the things I love about E3 is stuff that you're not expecting. And that was the one that I liked. Other than that, the Just Dance Dance Off, I love it every year. No, I'm just kidding. But
So
yeah,
the funny thing is, my wife walked in while that part was playing, and she's like, "Ooh, I want to watch this. Don't change it." I'm like,
yeah, I mean, there's an audience out there. I mean, they do it every year. There's an audience for it. And then the other one that made me grumble a little bit was another streaming service that is all Ubisoft.
Totally forgot about that. But you know what?
Uplay Plus.
What's
Uplay
crazy
Plus.
is that so it's going to be, as I understand it, available for PC, and it's, at least at the moment, it's not going to be on Xbox or PlayStation. It'll be on Stadia.
Nope. Stadia,
Yeah.
right.
So I
Partner
thought that
with
was a pretty
Stadia.
good get for Stadia, considering that, at the moment anyways, they're going to be the only service outside of just straight PC that's going to have it.
Yeah.
True.
If that's
Yeah,
your bag.
so
Because there's a lot of people out there that are like, man, I'm a Ubisoft guy. Everything they do just gets, I just love the Ubisoft stuff, and that makes perfect sense. I agree with the whole, all right, another streaming or another subscription service that I got to get in behind, So
Yeah,
we'll
but
see.
I mean, that's huge for Stadia, and one of the things that is huge about Uplay Plus, just like Game Pass, all new Ubisoft games are going to be available on it, which is unbelievable. That Xbox does that, but now Ubisoft is doing that. I'm just waiting for the day that PlayStation does that. I don't know if they're ever going to do that because they're like,
now. I will be shocked if it does not, or something happens. It's not going to happen right now, but when a next generation PS5 rolls out, I would be shocked if at some point they don't make that a thing.
Uplay Plus is $15 a month, right?
Yep.
correct.
See, I think if you're a Ubisoft guy, I think that's a good price point.
It also comes with all DLC is included, as I understand it too.
I think that's great. I'm not a big Ubisoft guy, so for me, that streaming service just doesn't make a lot of sense. But man, if you were going to go with Stadia right now and you're a Ubisoft guy, dude, get on that. That's like a heck of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Because Xbox Game Pass does not include DLC, correct? It gives you a discount if you decide to purchase it, but it doesn't include if there's an expansion pass or something.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. Yeah.
It's only free if it's from Microsoft Studios.
So even Microsoft
the-
Studios games, the DLC, if there's DLC, it's for Sea of Thieves, that's added for free.
Correct.
Interesting, I did not know that.
So they're doing that for Forza Horizon.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing an expansion for the Lego Speed, or whatever
Lego
it's called.
Speed Champs or something like that.
They're doing State of Decay 2. They new expansion there. That's free.
Gotcha.
So I assume that's with all the others as well.
There was one other thing I saw in Ubisoft that actually I kind of thought was interesting, and that's the Gods and Monsters game, which to me looks like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild set in Greece, because it's all Greek mythology, and it's some sort of, you're going to be this character fighting to save the Greek gods or something. It's probably not a game that's going to hit everyone. It's not going to have the big support behind it like Zelda does, because Zelda's Zelda, right? And if you're into Nintendo, that's, a massive title for them. But I did like kind of the animation of it and the art style. I thought it looked good. I think it has potential, but I need to see a lot more of that game before I'd be willing to drop any money on it, though. But I like the idea of it. So that was the last thing I had from Ubisoft. Let's roll over to Microsoft. Let's go to one of the big ones here. Chris, I'll let you kick it off here. Microsoft.
Mm-hmm. So probably going to be the same thing that you guys are going to say and everybody's going to say, but for me it was Cyberpunk 2077. I feel like everybody's waiting on that game, and nobody was expecting to see Keanu Reeves' face pop up right there at the very end of it, and then him to walk out on stage. So that was a cool little moment, just added to the hype of the whole situation.
And let me ask you this real quick.
Yeah.
What do you think they paid those actors to come out? Because literally he was on stage for maybe 90 seconds. And Rob McElhaney and some others that had come out, how much do you think that they pay them to come out to do something like that, to fly all the way to E3 for a 90-second thing, take a look at this?
I don't know, because it might be something similar to with movies, where part of the deal that they sign when they do it is and you're going to also have to be part of so much promotion. So maybe it's not just for
maybe.
that one thing. Maybe it's just like, oh, and we're also going to want you to promote the game because they probably know when they're getting all the script put together and they're signing on the actors, like, oh, we're going to make a splash at E3 with game X, at some point. So I don't know, but whatever way it is, whether it's all tied into the contract initially or it's just a one-off thing, I'm sure they're paying good money.
I was to say, I'm like, man,
I'm sure it's
to
not
fly
cheap.
all that way. Ooh, yeah.
But I mean, shoot, as many copies of this game as CD Projekt is probably going to end up selling, I bet they feel like it's absolutely worth it. Outside of that, the other game, and honestly, the thing at Xbox's show that gave me the most interest was this game called 12 Minutes.
Yes.
That game looks sick. And at least as of right now, it seems to only be coming to PC and Xbox. So it's going to be a Microsoft exclusive to some extent, if either timed or forever. I'm not exactly sure. So I'm wondering, I'm hoping that it will come to, and I'm assuming it will come to Xbox One or Xbox One X, this current generation, because I think it said it releases in 2020, which we do know, as we're going to probably touch on here in a second, Project Scarlet is supposed to release in holiday 2020.
Right.
I don't remember if there was a month given for 12 minutes. There might have been.
They just said
I don't
holiday.
think so.
Okay, so I think if if that game's gonna release in 2020, then I would assume it's gonna be a cross-generational game where it releases on whatever Project Scarlet's official name is gonna be, and Xbox One and Xbox One S and X and all the variants of Xbox One, because that game was super interesting. I love the top-down view idea, staying in, as it seems, in just that room the entire time in the time loop and figuring it out. That looked really, really cool to me.
Yep. So let's talk about Project Scarlet real fast, because I'm sure that was on all of ours. I was on my list, I know. What I liked about this is that Sony, even though Sony wasn't at E3, Sony a little while ago released information about the PlayStation 5. Like, they've been kind of slowly dripping and dropping out some details about the PS5. So I knew for sure Microsoft is going to have to come out and talk about their new Xbox console. There's just no way they would not say something about it. And they actually gave us some pretty decent amount of details as far as what they thought it was going to do and a little bit about the hardware. But what I was excited about, even though I'm not an Xbox guy this generation, is that they said that they're going to be launching it with Halo Infinite. And I think that that's super smart because Halo is one of their big IPs. And it was the big IP that sold the original Xbox and got people to go get Microsoft's new console back in the day. Only a little teaser. How did you guys feel about just seeing like literally 30 seconds of, not non-gameplay, just a cutscene? Was that enough to say like, hey, this is something I want to get? Is it just enough to entice you?
Now, didn't they do that with the last Halo? Like, they showed that trailer where he's, like, in the desert with, like, a cape, and he throws it off, and he's, that shows it's Master Chief.
Master
like,
Chief, yep.
It felt like that, where that was, like, not even in the game, like, at all. It was just like, hey, we're going to make another Halo game. And I feel like this was another, like, hey, we're going to make another Halo game. Here's a short cinematic that shows that, hey, Master Chief is back. Hopefully you are Master Chief this entire game, because they kind of screwed it up last game when you weren't him the entire time. So you were his, like, I don't know who it was last time. I'm not big on the Halo games, but if, like, I think a lot of the stuff that was,
I think it was the other
Locke.
guy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. A lot of people who love the Halo series is Master Chief, and we're not playing as Master Chief. It feels a little off. So I'm hoping they do that, and shipping it with the new console was going to sell consoles.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they talked about the hardware. I mean, they talked about the fact they're going to be using, GDDR6 RAM. They talked about, it's going to do 8K at 120 frames per second. I mean, they were talking about all this stuff in the AMD processor. And I thought that's all great. I mean, I think that's all things that gamers now are smart enough to know, like, hey, this means it's going to be powerful and I'm going to be able to stream it. And, they talked about their new console streaming that's coming later this year. So we know that's going to be around when, Project Scarlet, takes place holiday 2020. But I think for them, and I've been saying this for a while, they've got to come out strong on their release. And I think going with one of their biggest IPs is their safest bet to have a big release.
Yeah, I think so too. But going back to like the tech specs of the new Xbox, I mean, like they talked about the solid state drive and how everything's going to load so much faster.
Right.
Like PlayStation had like a little small conference or whatever it was that showed side by side between PlayStation 4 Pro and the specs for the new PlayStation 5, quote unquote. And they showed Spider-Man's loading scenes.
Yeah.
And one was like less than a second for the new PS5 as opposed to the PS4, which was like 15 seconds. So I'm assuming that's the same thing that's going to happen with the new Xbox with that solid state drive. And I'm kind of like, I don't know how I want to feel about that, because a lot of the loading screens nowadays, they give you like hints like, hey, remember to do this.
Yeah, or
hey,
info.
If you press A, X, Y, B, this happens. So it's like, I'm going to miss some of that stuff.
The other thing too, I feel like we're at a point where, like, when a new iPhone or a new like Samsung Galaxy releases, they say, and this phone has 0.5% more pixels than the last phone. Like, we kind of get to a place where like technology, we're still improving, but it's like not as flashy, like big, massive, like generational leaps than we used to have back in the day, because we're getting to super high end stuff. So it's kind of like, okay, I can now do 120 frames per second. Great, that sounds wonderful, but really, I mean, the difference between 60 and 120, it all looks amazing.
Can the human eye even see that fast?
No.
So here's the deal.
That's the thing.
The reason that 120 frames a second is important is because this generation, they're struggling just to hit 60. So what that's likely going to mean is that almost every single game next generation, whichever machine it's on, because based on the specs,
will at least be 60.
Yeah, will at the very least be 60. Which to me, I'm not a PC guy. I don't play games on PC. Very rarely do I do that. And I don't play anything at 120 frames, 140 frames, 90 frames.
Yeah.
I don't do any of that. I can tell the difference when I see it. I can pick up on it. But to me, if I at least have 60, like 60 feels so much better than 30. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy a ton of 30 frame games. I do. But I want all my games at 60 frames. I don't even care if you got to cap it at 1080p. I really don't, because 4K is great. That's lovely.
Yeah.
I want frame rate. I want at least 60 frames a second. So to me, the reason that I really enjoy seeing 120 frames per second, because right now there's very few TVs out there that are actually doing 120 frames per second at 4K anyways. So to me, it just guarantees that whatever these numbers they talk about, you bring it down, because there's going to be very few, if any, games the whole generation at 8K. So It just means that, our console is capable of pushing this. So realistically, for all the crazy stuff you want to do in your game, let's dial it down to 4K 60, or at the very least 1080p 60, which I'm fine with. The other thing about all of these specs is that they match pretty much beat for beat, because we don't have actual specs, like we don't have the gigahertz numbers and how many gigs of RAM and yada yada yada, but it's basically, they said all the exact same things that the PlayStation 5, or what we're calling it, the PlayStation 5, the next PlayStation, was going to have. So it basically says, that also says to me that next generation is going to start the exact same way that this one did, where the two machines are basically going to be the same. One of them is probably going to peak out a little bit ahead of the other one. Now, what I thought was going to be PlayStation's kind of like killer thing is they made it sound in theirs that they had an SSD that they custom made for this console, probably in partnership with AMD. I don't remember if it said that specifically. So I was kind of thinking, maybe that will be their gotcha if they have one, because maybe Xbox won't have an SSD. Xbox is having an SSD that they also said that they custom made with AMD. So It's like, okay, so we really are back to the other one, because at the beginning of this generation, it was two 8-core consoles, both using a variant of Jaguar. They both had so much RAM, and then it just came down to like Xbox One was using that ES RAM, and then PlayStation decided to go with GDDR5, and that was kind of like what made the difference for them. And so it's going to come down to the next generation is going to boot off, and they're probably going to be like neck and neck in terms of power. And I think that's great, because that's the way you want the generation to start, because we've already clearly established mid-generation refreshes is going to be a thing going forward. So that's probably going to happen next go round. And then as far as you were talking about earlier about launching with Halo, I agree. Launching with a Halo game is a really smart move because the Xbox faithful, that is what they love and that is what they really want. I don't know. It's hard to ask this question because you get the people who don't care about Halo that are going to agree with you, and then you get the people that are fervent about Halo, and they're just going to be like, how dare you say such a thing? I wonder how relevant Master Chief still is these days. Now, I know he's still relevant as a character, but the franchise feels long in the tooth. And I feel like people have been getting a little, even Xbox, or not Xbox, but Halo super fans. I feel like they felt like they've gotten a little bit burned ever since Bungie left. I don't feel like there's been a single 343 game that they've really been like, oh my gosh, this is the best. Maybe that first one, but I'm just not sure. It's like it's great to be launched with a Halo. I think that's going to get people hyped, especially the base, so to speak.
Yep.
I really am a little concerned. I hope it's not a dud for them. I really don't, because for people who love Halo, and there's a lot of them out there, I feel like they've been burned a little bit too much, and I'm kind of hoping for a win for them. I'm kind of with Patrick. I'm not a big Halo guy. I never had the original Xbox. The only one I had before my Xbox One was I had the 360, but Halo just never really did much for me. But I know a lot of people, a bunch of friends of mine that are really, really into it, and it's like, man, I really don't want them to get burned again. So I think it's smart to launch with a Halo.
I used to be a big Halo guy. Halo 1, 2, and 3, I was all over those games. Way too many hours invested in those games. Halo 4 hit when 343 took over. I played it and I went, ooh, this is not the normal kind of Halo experience I'm used to. Yeah. And it left a somewhat sour taste in my mouth. I never went back and did any of the other Halo stuff after that because I heard all sorts of stuff and I know how it's gone, and I'm up to date on it, and I'm not on Xbox now, but I'm not going to go buy an Xbox just because of Halo anymore.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I would, but I won't anymore. There's just too many other options and too many other things I want to play. I don't buy a console for a single game.
As far as it only being like a cinematic cutscene trailer, essentially, I don't think that's a big deal because it's launching next year, so they're going to have to show gameplay at next E3, which is what I'm feeling like they're probably going to do. And I feel like saying a game and then the following year it launches is no big deal, so that's not fine. It's a bigger issue, in my opinion, that we're a couple months out from Gears 5 and really haven't seen much gameplay from that.
Yes,
so that's a little strange.
That was all trailer stuff.
Yeah, so that is more worrisome to me. Again, I'm not a big Gears guy either. I'll just put this out there. Most of the Microsoft specific or exclusive, or at least in the past exclusive in their first party stuff, doesn't really grab me the same way that it does a lot of other people. But I'm a gamer, so I'm interested. And that one was like, man, I really thought they were going to like bring the gameplay this because this game's like around the corner essentially, and they didn't. So I was like, well, I hope that's not a sign of bad things.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm not a big Gears guy, but it's like, show me something, show me some gameplay to make me, excited. Patrick, did you have anything else on the Microsoft, or are we ready to move on?
Yeah, excuse me. One more thing. I wanted to talk about the Project xCloud that's coming out later this year.
Yeah.
And Phil Spencer, when he was talking about it, he glossed over it, but there was one thing that really stuck out to me, is your Xbox with Project xCloud is going to be its own server, so you can access your games wherever you are. And what that looks like is can you do that on a laptop? Can you do that on your phone? Can you do it through a browser, kind of like Stadia does? So that's coming out in October, like 1 month before Stadia comes out. I think it's going to be like a semi-competitor to Stadia. I mean, if you're able to play the same games that Stadia has on an Xbox that you already own, that you don't have to pay anything extra. I don't know if there's any subscription service for this Project xCloud. They didn't say it, but to me, like when I went on vacation, I went to Florida. I was like, I want to bring my PS4, but my Xbox is gonna have to stay here. If I could just log into my Xbox through anywhere that I am with minimal to no lag, that just sounds awesome to me. I mean, Stadia sounds great to me. But like I said, like we said earlier, I don't need another subscription service. I don't need another thing to have, kind of thing. So if I can use that same cloud service with what I already have without paying anything extra, that just sounds awesome to me.
So Project xCloud is going to be a subscription service. It is going to cost money. They're not talking about the price yet. And they didn't mention this when he was on the stage. Like you said, he talked about it very briefly. I've read some interviews with him outside of that, where, various outlets were able to we got some time with Phil Spencer. Here's what we asked him about, those kind of things. The streaming part where they mentioned about your Xbox One becoming its own server, essentially what that part is, that part's going to be free. That's not part of xCloud in terms of part of the subscription.
That's just like remote play.
Yeah, it's basically going to be like remote play the way that it is on PS4. Now, where I don't know is that, because like right now, remote play on iOS and then on, if you're on PC or Mac, it's done through an app that you're using. I don't know about the streaming, the remote play, if you will, version of Xbox, if that's going to work through a browser like you were mentioning before, or is it going to require you to download an app? I don't really know. I don't really think it matters at the end of the day, because either way, I think it's fine. In some respects, I think the app makes a little bit more sense. Not so much for Stadia, because it's only a streaming service. I think it does them better to have flexibility doing it through the browser. In terms of xCloud, it is going to be a subscription, and I think that they're going to. I would assume that it's basically just going to be Xbox Game Pass, but in the cloud. I'm assuming they're going to kind of tie in together some way like that. That's the way they're going to try to pull one over, get a leg up, if you will, on Stadia, because Stadia is going to be launching out the gate with less games just overall, even though they are going to have things like the Ubisoft subscription service that they can access to and everything as well. I'm super interested in where it's going to go, because we know like PlayStation has PlayStation Now, and even though it's done well for itself, it doesn't get any of the mind share really.
Right.
Obviously, Stadia has made a huge splash recently, and they're looking to push out of the gate really hard. Whether or not it's going to work for people, we'll have to find out. And then xCloud, I'm super excited to see where these things are going to go. I'm very much on the fence of buying that Founders Edition on Stadia, because I want to give it a try. And it's only 3 months of Pro, and then you can get rid of it. And I have the controller and the dongle, Chromecast thing you plug in the TV in case I want to use it down the road. Because honestly, I feel like the free version of it that gets you 1080p 60 will be fine for me. But I really just want to give it a shot. So I am right on the fence of just pre-ordering that thing, just so I can jump in right at the very beginning, which is probably when it's going to be the worst version of it. It's going to do nothing to get better. So that's probably, but I just, it's the new shiny tech. I really want to do it, but we'll just have to see. I'm super excited about where the streaming stuff goes, because I feel like they can get it to a really good spot. At least for me. I mean, unfortunately, I'm in a place where I have a really good connection, and I've not always been in this area, but like for me, I have pretty much everything I need to be able to make it work, if it's going to work the way they say it's going to. So like let's see if you're legit, because I got all your things you told me I got to have. I got the bandwidths, and I got the megabits, and whatever you want. I got the Stadia controller. Why is this not banging? Or
1.21 gigawatts.
Exactly. I want to see if it works. So
yeah.
It's cool. Like that Stadia has entered the gaming realm, because it only benefits us as gamers when there's competition. Mm-hmm. It makes everyone step their game up. And so I'm really interested to see how all this works together.
Because Stadia became a thing, Sony signed a deal with Microsoft. I mean, there's your proof there that competition makes people do crazy and wacky things.
Yep. I'm with you guys. I'm close to pulling the trigger on the Stadia, but I'm still a little on the fence. I'm kind of trying to decide, because, maybe it's going to be great, but then maybe it's going to be rough for the first 3-4 months. Mm-hmm. I guarantee that a year after it's been released, it's going to look a million times better than it does at launch.
I'll say this, the main thing that makes me, besides just the new tech and wanting to see how it works and the curiosity factor, the main thing pushing me towards Stadia, wanting to give it a shot and really pulling for it, is because I don't have a gaming PC. And sure, I could buy one, I could build one, and I'm actually really considering that, in the next couple of years. But like if Stadia works, if it's banging like right off the beginning, it's like, I don't need it. I just play Stadia.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They've got the servers. You don't need it. Yeah. Well, let's jump over to Bethesda, and let's talk about Bethesda for a couple minutes here. Patrick, what did you think of the Bethesda conference?
See, now Bethesda, Their games are not my kind of games. I mean, like
Man.
the Doom, Wolfenstein, Elder Scrolls, like all that stuff. Like it's to me like going back to where we were talking about Good Place and TV shows.
Yeah.
It's like they're wearing out their welcome. It's like I played these games so many different times. Like I don't need to play them anymore, kind of thing. So yeah, Bethesda's not really really my kind of game. But there was one game that they didn't show any gameplay for, but has me very interested because I love anything that has to deal with like time travel or time manipulation. Like 12 Minutes was Deathloop, and it was just like there's two guys that are continuously killing each other, and they have like these force powers, force push, force pull, kind of like Jedi kind of feel. But it was just all like a cinematic, and that was pretty much the only game that interests me, other than I think it was Ghostwire Tokyo, and that game again, another one without any gameplay. It was just the kind of setting that it is, where like it was set in Tokyo and people just started disappearing. Like their clothes just like fell to the ground, kind of like a snap just happened.
Yeah.
Except it is like a horror game, and I'm big on the horror games.
Nope.
And yeah, I am up late where it's dark, and I'm using Quibi or whatever it's called.
Right. Yeah.
But other than the game, that game and that's cinematic, the way that it was presented and the woman that came out and presented that game was one of the creators. So she was like very Japanese, and she was trying to speak in English, and she was like very genuine. It kind of reminded me of last year when one of the developers came out and talked about Sea of Solitude, and she got very emotional when she was presenting that game. And same with this woman was like, she's like, I'm here, I am in the United States, I'm going to speak English, I'm really excited about this game. She was funny, she was genuine, and which made me more interested about the game, because people who are like that, who are genuine like that, put a lot of care into their kind of games, that they're going to tell a very genuine story. So I'm very interested to play that game, or to see more about that game.
And what was the name of it again?
Ghostwire Tokyo. It's from Tango Games.
Yeah, it looked cool. So I'm like you, Patrick. Bethesda games aren't my bag. That's just not kind of.
Let's make it 3 for 3,
typically.
because I'm right there in the same boat. I didn't even watch the Bethesda one.
Yeah, I did, but I kind of went, I don't care about Doom and Wolfenstein's like, I played the original Wolfenstein game on PC in school as a kid. It's like, the game has, the graphics have gotten better and whatnot, but it's the same type of idea, right? What I will say I did find interesting is that right out of the gate, they talk about Fallout 76 in their conference. And obviously Fallout 76, they're betting a lot on this thing, because it's online. It's going to continue to go on for years and years. They're going to be supporting it. And they admitted their faults. They admitted that the game had problems. And then they talked about this new update that's coming called the Wastelanders, that's going to introduce NPCs back into the game, which was a main staple of that series. And they took out, and it failed horribly. They're going to put it in. It's going to have stories again. And so I feel like they're doing a 180 pivot in order to try to save this game and make it continue to be viable in the future. And I thought that at least was smart of them to just own it and say, yes, we made big mistakes, but we're trying to correct this and we're fixing it, and it's free. You're not going to have to pay for it.
Yeah.
I think that's funny, though, they're like, now with NPCs, and like the crowd's going crazy. I'm like, what in the world? Like, shouldn't this open world game have NPCs anyways? Like, I was so confused, like, why that was a big deal.
Well, I know the NPCs are the big story drivers in those games, and they didn't do it when they launched it because they just wanted it to be you and just the other players on that server. So it felt empty, which I was like, in theory, that sounds great, but that's kind of like saying like, hey, I'm going to, gut the core of what that experience is, kind of who we are as a studio to try something new. And oh boy, it did not work out. Not at all.
No.
But at least they admitted that. The other thing, though, is that, of course, I got a kick out of this because we know that Battle Royale, Battle Royale games are like, the hotness. Everyone's got to follow that Fortnite model. And so they introduced what they call it, Nuclear Winter, where, they're going to be dropping some bombs. So you've got to force you into a confined space and you're just, it's a mode you can play. And I went, okay, you've got to do it, right? I mean, everyone else is doing it. It's big business. There's lots of opportunity to, make money with skins and whatnot and weapons and what. But I mean, come on. On a game that was struggling so hard that you had to pivot and do a 180 to try to save it, to then just be like, and we're tossing Battle Royale. Hopefully that'll work. It felt a little desperate.
Fallout 76 shouldn't have been a Fallout game. It should have been just some other thing when they made it. Now, people may still not have really super enjoyed it, but people went into it wanting a Fallout, and it wasn't a Fallout. So it's like they should have just branded it differently and used the same engine and make it look like Fallout, but call it, something different. That would have helped them out in the beginning. Then on top of all these things, I don't have an issue with them bringing in because it's just a mode, right?
It's just a mode.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Let them jump into it. And I understand the people who don't or just want to Fallout, granted they're doing some things to get it more Fallout-y, are probably always going to be upset because all they want is another Fallout. But I'm fine with them adding the Battle Royale. I don't mind, the more the merrier in the field. It just makes them, better. There's only the few are going to rise at the top to be the cream of the crop. At the moment, that's Fortnite, and for the foreseeable future, that's Fortnite. In my opinion, Apex Legends is one of those as well. And then, a lot of people are still over there chugging along on PUBG, even though it doesn't really have as much of the mind share as it used to have. But I think it's fine that they've added these things, and good on them for turning things around the best they can, because at the moment anyways, it doesn't look like Anthem's going to turn anything around. So good on them for not, just throwing in the towel and bouncing out. They're at least trying to figure out things. Granted, they shouldn't have been in this place to begin with, but, they were, and good on them for trying to right the ship, if you will.
I don't fault anyone for trying to do something different and trying to pivot away because, eventually you've got to adapt somehow. You've got to do something a little different. So I don't fault them for that. But I do applaud them for saying, hey, we made a big mistake and we've got a lot of money and time into this thing. We're going to try to find a way to turn it around and make it so it's still a good thing at the end of the day.
I found it funny when Todd Howard, he comes out and he immediately addresses the criticism from Fallout 76. And he says, based on all the criticism from Fallout 76, I'm surprised you guys are here. It's like he made everyone laugh. Todd Howard is one of the great speakers in the gaming industry. He really knows how to talk to people. And him to come out and pretty much say, hey, we're sorry. We know we messed up. We're trying to fix it. Here's some awesome things that we're giving you.
Yeah. And admittedly, though, you got to say, the Bethesda fans, the fanboys, if you will, the fandom, they're rabid. Everything Bethesda does, they go nuts over. And that crowd was packed full of those type of people, which I think is good, especially when you're coming out and starting with an apology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't really have much else from the Bethesda conference, to be perfectly honest. If you guys don't, we can move on.
Yeah, I don't either.
All right.
Let's move on.
Let's go on to then my favorite, Square Enix. Chris, what did you think of Square Enix's press conference?
I think Final Fantasy Remake is looking good.
Yeah, buddy.
Now, I'm still not. It's a bit of. I'm not someone who played and fell in love with the original Final Fantasy VII way back in the day when it came out on PlayStation. So I just know it because I'm a gamer and I'm into gaming culture. I know Final Fantasy. I know its legend. I know most of the beats of the story. Not all of them, obviously, because I haven't played it. I still don't really understand or know what I think about this whole breaking it up. Because this first game, they're calling it Final Fantasy. Number one, they're calling it Final Fantasy VII Remake. They're not calling it Final Fantasy Remake Part 1 or Part 1 Midgar Journey or something, because it's only going to take the part that takes place in Midgar, which, as I understand it, is a very small portion of the game, which is fine. But like, if it's taking them this long just to get this first version out, are they putting too much into it or biting off a bit more they can chew? Because they're to get through the entire game feels like that's going to be like 7 parts or something. And how long are those going to take to come out? So that part right there in particular has me a little like, how's this going to go? But at the same time, as someone who is an admitted not a fan of turn-based gameplay, I just don't really like that unless it's a card game. I am all about them moving over to the action side of things and still keeping some elements of kind of the strategy that you would have with a turn-based thing. Again, being a person that's never played Final Fantasy VII, my plan was to probably give this one a go. I'm still on the train right now of I'm planning to probably get it. I'm going to wait a little bit more before I haven't put down a pre-order if they're even pre-orderable.
Yes, they are.
I definitely, I'm pretty confident that I'll be jumping into this because it looks really good. And I always thought that the characters for Final Fantasy VII, Cloud and Barrett and so forth, I always thought they looked cool. Final Fantasy characters in general tend to look really cool. So I'm all for it. I'm excited hopefully for Gabe because I think he's going to be excited about it, especially now that we have an actual date. March 3rd, 2020 is when this first part of Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to be dropping. So that seems really cool to me. And then I guess the other thing that was everybody kind of wanted to see was Avengers. And so we got more information about it. We didn't see any actual gameplay of it. We did find out that PlayStation's going to have some type of either timed exclusivity or maybe exclusive content that's timed coming to them.
Bonus
I think they also get
something.
like either an open beta, or they get access to some kind of beta before everybody else, or they're the only ones who get it. I'm not exactly sure on that part, which is a little interesting. I wasn't expecting that to be. I kind of feel like that kinds of stuff has gone by the wayside and isn't really a thing that much anymore. I mean, I guess technically it is still with Call of Duty. They'll get maps, for whatever thing a month later. But
the Tomb Raider games though had the timed exclusives. It released and then you had to wait 3 months or a year
just outside
in order to get
of
it.
Call of Duty, I feel like it's been a long time since we've seen another game go that route. So I kind of thought those were over. So that was a little bit of like, I wasn't expecting that. But, I don't think it's going to be anything game-breaking or a huge deal, or at least I hope it's not, because that'd be a bummer for, people on whatever their other system is that's really looking forward to playing it. But I think those were the two that stuck out to me the most.
So what I liked about the Final Fantasy that they showed is that they did take some time to describe the combat system, because I kind of so I played the original, I played the mess out of the original, I played it a few times on different consoles even. I liked the ability to strategize how you were going to, interact, when you were going to use potions, when you were going to do this ability versus, this, limit break or whatever. But I liked it in this one that they've made it look like a hack and slash game, and it looks like it's going to feel that way. But then you have the active battle bars, or active time bars, I think they're calling it, to slow it down and then to do some of those other things. Because I think that's going to be a good hybrid system to appease the old traditional fans of the series, but still make it feel like a modern game, because it looks like a modern game, and you can't have the same turn-based mechanics that the original did. That just would kill the game.
Yep.
So I thought that demo was good, where they spent time showing how the mechanics worked. The other thing is, Chris, I'm with you. I do not like this idea of serializing this game. I just want the whole game. But the one thing I keep thinking is that you spend a decent amount of time in Midgar at the beginning of that game, and then eventually the world opens up to you and you get to go out and explore around. So I'm really wondering if they're putting basically just Midgar, and it's going to be on 2 Blu-rays, because they said 2 and the crowd went nuts, and I went, yes, this means it's going to be big and there's going to be a lot to do. My hope is that it's going to be maybe at best 3 3 installments. Maybe it'll be like the Midgar, and then it'll be kind of like the second act where the world opens up and you kind of get out and go do some more things, and then it'll be the third act, which will take you through to the ending and the finale. That's my hope, because if you break this up into hey, you're going to get a new chapter to play every other month or something like that, people are going to lose interest. No matter what the title is, people will lose interest, and people that start the game, that same number will not be finishing the game, guaranteed.
I guess I just don't want it to end up getting, and I know this is an extreme example, but I don't want it to end up getting
Telltale?
No, I definitely don't want that either. But no, I don't want it to end up getting the Kingdom Hearts treatment, where like you're waiting years between installments. It's
right.
Like, come on. Like once number 1 drops, which is what I'm going to call this one, is part 1, because that's essentially what it is. Maybe 2 years. The next one needs to be out.
Oh, it's got to be a lot sooner than that.
You can't do this 3-4 years in between stuff. I mean, yes, you can with the Final Fantasy like faithful, but you can't do that with the normal people that are just figuring it out and just playing it for the first time. And I just don't think that's going to work.
Yeah. What do you think, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm like you, Chris. The only Final Fantasy game that I have ever played was the Final Fantasy VII demo. That is the only Final Fantasy game I've ever played. And that was back when I don't know, I might have been in high school or middle school or when that came out. When did that come? 1996?
97.
97. So I was in middle school at the time, and I played that demo over and over again. That's the only time I ever played it. So when I heard that Final Fantasy VII was coming out, I'm like, okay, I get it. It's legendary. It's one of the best games. Final Fantasy, blah blah blah. So it was never been on my radar. I don't really enjoy the Final Fantasy games. Japanese style games in general don't pull me in for whatever reason. That aesthetic, that kind of artistry from those games really doesn't pull me in at all. So when it kicked off and they're like Final Fantasy VII, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna watch this and see how this goes. And I'm like, wow, this is actually a pretty good looking game. I mean, they put a lot of time into this. They better look good, and it was
right.
And I am not a turn-based kind of gamer. The only turn-based game I have ever played for an extended period of time was Knights of the Old Republic. That was the only one I and then when South Park, when I found out it was turn-based, I was like, nope, not playing it. As much as I like South Park, I can't play this game because I do not like turn-based games. So when they started showing Final Fantasy VII that it's not turn-based, I was like, okay, I get it. All right, cool. And then when they showed the gameplay mechanic of stopping time and choosing your next action, I was like, oh, man, I almost was into this. And then they said you can actually change it to be more like hack and slash.
Yep.
And my interest level in the first 3 minutes of this presentation was up and down, and then it was up. I'm like, hack and slash, sweet. I think I'm gonna get this game. And then 15 more minutes of them battling one boss. I'm like, are you gonna show me something else? My interest level was up here when you were talking about hack and slash. And then you're going to show one boss for the next 10 minutes. And it was just oh my gosh. I started to get bored. I started show me something else, please, because I want to be interested in this game. I want to be in the conversation. I want to finally play a Final Fantasy game, especially a remake of arguably the best Final Fantasy game out there. But yeah, it was just I'm on the fence. I need to see a little bit more. But as far as the parts, I don't care, I'm not into the Final Fantasy lore. I know nothing about Final Fantasy. I was on Discord chat with Mark Boucher, and he's doing all the gasps, oh, I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't know. Why are you gasping? He's like, oh, it's Aerith. I'm like, who's Aerith? I don't know anything here. The only one I know is Cloud, who is carrying this 6-foot huge sword on his back. How is he running around with this?
That Buster sword. Ooh. Yeah. That is the thing. I did agree with you, Patrick, that the fight scene where they're showing the boss fight went on for a while. And I think the only reason why they kind of did that, because they were talking over it and they were explaining other things about the game when they were doing that. I think it's because they don't want to show too much, because the Final Fantasy games in general, and specifically 7, you fight and you have battles, but really the story is the thing. That's the reason why so many fans of that series are like, it's my favorite game, or I love this, and there's these emotional beats and things that happen. I don't think they can show a lot because they don't want to give away story, and they don't want to get into the narrative stuff, so they had to show something that was more of just like the mechanics and the gameplay. But I do agree, it did go on a little long. I mean, even for me, and I love the original. I mean, it was like, okay, I'm checking Twitter and seeing what other people are saying about it while it's going on. That sort of thing.
I think the entire conference was like that. They were showing games too much. Like, it was like some games were shown for 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. I'm like, wow, like I don't care about these games. Like they don't speak to me. Like. I know everyone has their own preferences, and Square speaks to a lot of people. Doesn't speak to me. So showing a 5-minute game about a game that looks like it's from Super Nintendo really doesn't speak to me. And I felt like it dragged on. Like showing Final Fantasy VII for 15 minutes, I get it. People are excited about it. But yeah, I felt like some of it was too long throughout the conference.
What did you think about the Avengers game? Chris talked about it a little bit. What did you think, Patrick?
I'm excited about it. I'm really, really excited about it. One of the big things that is on the internet is they don't look like the Avengers, and I get it. I mean, like it's gonna be tough to see Captain America or Iron Man or Black Widow. Hulk looks like the Hulk,
and not look for Chris Evans or Robert Downey Jr. Yeah,
exactly. So it's going to be a little different. I watched that. The trailer for that game maybe 5 times, and I watched the whole entire 15-minute presentation of the Avengers 3 times. Like I wanted to take in all of this, and each time I saw something new. Each time I saw something that I hadn't seen before that was, oh, okay. And Chris, you had mentioned that we didn't see any gameplay, but after watching that trailer multiple times, I feel like we did. I feel like we did see some gameplay. The way the camera angle is, it looks like we saw some QTE. We saw some Iron Man was moving in and out of action between missiles, against the bad guys. I feel like we saw some of it. Now it was very cinematic, which is the kind of game this is. It looks like it's going for. It's kind of like the Uncharted kind of feel to it, but Avengers. And I mean, like in this trailer, I mean, Captain America dies, and they said this is not the beginning of the game; it's early in the game. So when they showed Captain America and he was wearing like this big gear, like it didn't look like his suit. But in the game, one of the mechanics is you can upgrade your suits. You can add gear. It's kind of like the Injustice 2 gear system or the new Mortal Kombat gear system. Like as you level up, you can get some sort of currency or abilities where you can use skill points or gear points to upgrade your suits. So that's interesting. It has a little bit of RPG elements to it. But I am really excited. I've watched every single Marvel movie out there multiple times, and I'm ready to get into another Avengers storyline that's kind of away from the movies, so it's going to feel new. And we have Troy Baker, Nolan North, Laura Bailey,
Travis Willingham.
Travis Willingham,
who's playing in Thor, and he's done Thor before in other
and all
mediums.
Like the games and
so he's done it before. So it's gonna be very, very well done. And even the cutscenes where it's like this is Captain America dies 5 years later. It feels like the movies kind of thing. We're like, oh no, we lost, and they have to get back and assemble again. So that's kind of cool. I like that story element. I'm a very story driven single player kind of player. So I like those kind of stories.
Yeah, it did look very, very good. The last thing I'll just say about Square Enix is that they did show a lot of things that are like, hey, this has only been available in Japan. We're now bringing it to America. That sort of stuff with like the Mana, the Crystal Chronicles, and the Legends of Mana and all that. But what I did find very interesting is that they said they're going to remaster Final Fantasy VIII, which is a game that fans have wanted. And recently we got, 9 that's being remastered and 10 and it's going to like Switch and, a bunch of other places. But they didn't say anything about Final Fantasy VIII, and it's been 20 years since that release. And it's pretty commonly believed that they've lost all the original source code. And so that this is not just going to be a remaster, but they're going to have to like re-engineer most of this game. So it's taken a while. They haven't said much. I thought that was really interesting. I think they're saying it's coming out later this year, I believe. So I'm excited about that. I wanted to have the option to replay that in a better looking version. And then Outriders. It's the new shooter that they showed. I kind of thought that looked kind of cool. I don't know if it's a day one purchase, but from what I saw, I thought it looked fairly interesting. Square Enix did kind of go back to back, like the beginning with all the Final Fantasy VII stuff. There was a lot of talking, and then it was just literally like trailer after trailer after trailer till the very end. And I kind of like that because they did get a lot of stuff in there. Mm-hmm. And if you're into a lot of that Japanese stuff and that kind of Square Enix Final Fantasy stuff, there was a lot.
Like they showed like 6 Final Fantasy games. They showed Final Fantasy VII. They showed Final Fantasy VIII. They showed other. I feel like they showed like 6 of them.
There's like Final Fantasy Chronicles, and they showed like the Legends of the Mana stuff. They showed Crystal Chronicles. I think they said was being remastered, and then they also talked about it's like a Final Fantasy mobile game. I think it's Bravely Exodus.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, yeah,
it was a lot of it that I wasn't interested in. So I got kind of like they did show Final Fantasy VII, and then a lot of stuff I didn't care about.
Yeah,
and then Avengers bookended it.
Yeah, which I thought was good because if they would have front loaded all that, I think by the time you get to the mobile stuff, no one really cares.
Yeah, people are sticking around for Avengers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's move on to Nintendo. That's the last one we got. That one actually was this morning. Chris, did you get a chance to look at the Nintendo stuff? What did you think?
I did not. It happened while I was at work, so I did not get to watch it live. I've caught up with a few things, just basically like stuff that I saw on Twitter. I don't have a Switch, so specifically to me, none of it's really going to matter that much because I can't play it anyways. I did see that the stuff about like Animal Crossing and Luigi's Mansion. I did see there was heavily rumored that Witcher 3 was going to be coming to the Switch and that it is indeed coming to the Switch. I'm very curious. I don't know if they showed any kind of footage or gameplay, did they at all? Of that, or was it just like a logo?
No, it was pretty much cut scenes showing the cut scenes though on the Switch, from what I remember.
Okay, I'm very curious how it's going to look on the Switch because I'm assuming even though that's an older game, considering that it came out like towards the beginning of this generation, I still feel like they're going to have to dumb it down a bit to get it on the Switch. Not to say that it'll look bad. That's not what I mean. Because especially it's going to be on a smaller screen, so you don't need as much, resolution and depth.
Yeah, you're going to have to make sacrifices.
I'm curious to see how it's going to look. I'm sure it'll be, great, especially for people who that's their preferred way to play games is on the Switch and on the go. And then the other thing, I am not really a Nintendo guy, so maybe it's just because they don't have a history of ever doing this that maybe it was a huge shocker. I didn't understand why everybody was losing their minds that they confirmed that a Breath of the Wild sequel was being made because it's like, well, duh, it was like the biggest game ever when the year that it came out, won the Game Awards. It's the biggest, I think that's the biggest like Zelda game in terms of like purchase that they've ever had, so why would they not make another one? But then again, maybe that's just not their thing. I don't.
Do they not make sequels?
They make
for Zelda games.
No, they have.
But are they like direct sequels, or are they like the new version with the new Zelda and the new kind of area, and it's kind of like the same thing, but it's different?
Yeah, most of them it's like they'll make another Zelda game, and it's not necessarily a sequel. It's just kind of a new Zelda game, sometimes in a new setting or whatever.
A new art style or something.
Yeah, new art style stuff. But they have done a few. Like I can think of was it Zelda 2 or Link's Awakening? Like one of them was felt like it was supposed to be like a direct sequel from the original. What I think why the Breath of the Wild 2 got such a big reaction is that no one was even talking about it. Everyone's going to assume, yes, we're going to get a new Zelda game at some point, but no one was thinking, hey, they're already working on it, they're already developing it, because there's still a lot of other IP that people want. Like, people want to get a Metroid game, and we don't have a Metroid game yet. And so people want to see
But are
that
the same
stuff.
people that make Zelda make Metroid? I don't know.
Yep.
They are?
Yeah, I mean, it's a first party.
Okay.
So I just think the biggest reaction to that is that no one was expecting it. And it was like, oh, by the way, we have one more thing to show you. And they start showing it. It's like, ooh, hey, this looks like Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, it's going to be DLC, which would make the most sense. And then they're like, it's a sequel. And I think that's what, because like people just didn't think that was on the radar yet, because typically Zelda games are spaced out a little further.
And that's where my Nintendo ignorance is shining through, because the minute I rolled credits on Horizon Zero Dawn, I was like, oh yeah, they're working on Horizon 2. I mean, that's just
Right.
the way, when you have
Yeah.
a super successful game
Same thing
that's
with God
really
of
good
War.
and especially beloved in that generation,
Yep.
who said company, whoever it may be, seems like it'd be a no-brainer for them to start a sequel of some sort.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I hear all the points that you're making make total sense, especially to someone who doesn't understand all that part of it, not being like super into Zelda necessarily. So,
Yeah. And the Animal Crossing thing for me was like, it's interesting. I played the original. It's not a game I'm going to sink a lot of time into now, although maybe I would, because maybe my boys, but that we've already seen that's going to happen. That game's going to come out. They basically just said we're delaying it to make it right and to finish it correct and, make it the best it can possibly be. I don't know. Luigi's Mansion 3, I kind of thought that kind of looked cool. Patrick, did you get a chance to see that at all?
See, now I'm like you, Chris. Like, I'm not a Nintendo guy. Like, the last Nintendo I owned was Nintendo 64. Like the Mario, the Zelda, the Metroid, all the Nintendo games. They're not for me. When I was a kid, playing an NES, like that's what I owned. That's what I played when I was a kid. But as I've gotten older, a lot of the games that I'm interested are on PS4, are on Xbox One. So, like a new Luigi's Mansion, a new Legend of Zelda, a new Mario type of game, none of that really interests me. So the Nintendo Directs that they put out, like I never even pay attention to. It's something that's like out of sight, out of mind. I don't even like. I don't like Chris. I don't own a Switch. It's just one of those things that it's just over my head, off the radar. I never even look at it. But one of the things I did was very interesting to me was they're gonna put Witcher 3 on Switch. Like it's just like, if Witcher 3 can be on Switch, what game can't?
I mean, Skyrim is on there, and I thought that once Skyrim came on there, I thought stuff like Witcher is like, it's a kind of a no-brainer to me, because Skyrim is a big game. So what other big games are we going to see ported? My kind of whole take was, I like the Zelda games. I like the Mario games. I like the big kind of titles for Nintendo. But when it comes to things like The Witcher, like, that's awesome. I'm glad they're doing that. But I'd rather play that on my PS4.
Sure.
Skyrim, I'd rather play that on my PS4. And so for me, and I was trying to tell this to my brother, and we were talking about this, I said, for me, Nintendo always seems like, hey, we got this big game coming out that's us, that we own the IP. And by the way, we're also porting over a lot of other games now, where eventually, now we're getting this game that's been out for a couple years. And I think it's great that they can do that with the technology now. But those kind of announcements don't excite me as much. Just because it's like, well, okay, this game's like 3 years old. I mean, I can play it in a bunch of other places. Now, when they come out with something like, let's say, I don't know, The Witcher 4 comes out, and they announce that, hey, it's going to Xbox, whatever it's going to be called, and PS5, and Nintendo Switch 2, or whatever it's going to be when that gets announced, all at the same time, and it's a big game like that, I'll be more impressed with that than I will, hey, we've ported it 3 years after the fact.
Right.
I feel like there's a bit of a... So obviously, like, for instance, with The Witcher 3, it was kind of a beloved game. It was in Game of the Year contender for the year that it came out. I don't think that it won, not at Game Awards. It may have been on, Game of the Year list for certain things. I think you definitely have the people who are like, oh, I really loved this game, and now it's on this portable device that I have. I'll play it again. So you definitely have those people. But I think there are a lot of Nintendo people out there that that's just what they are. And it kind of reminds me of, last generation. For the vast majority of the generation up until the very tail end of it, most people were on Xbox 360 and slowly migrated over to having either a PS3 as well, or maybe they switched way later in the generation when they feel like they'd played everything on Xbox. So to them, or maybe they moved over to PlayStation right here at the PS4 and they never had a PlayStation before that. So to them, getting The Last of Us remastered makes total sense because they didn't have a PS3 last generation. They want to play that. And Sony knew, wow, we've got a lot more players that probably haven't experienced this game. So here it is. So I think a lot of times when those games come to Switch, like The Witcher or Skyrim, I think they're kind of banking on the fact that, one, this game's got a lot of replayability, but another, that we have a huge subsection of people that only play our console. This is new to them. I think they kind of bank on that a little bit. I don't know how. I mean, that's just my personal theory. I don't have any, data to back that up at all. It's just a guess that I have.
That's what my brother said too, Chris.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, Josh said the same thing. He's like, it's the portability now to play The Witcher anywhere you go. And I guess that is true. If that's a game like Skyrim or The Witcher where you're going to want to replay it, but you don't have time to sit down in front of your TV or your monitor, but you can take it with you and get in an hour at a lunch break every day for, a couple months. I mean, it's a legit argument for why to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very good argument. I mean, that's just not indicative of Nintendo. Any game that comes out for Xbox or PS or PlayStation or Nintendo, once it finally comes to another console, say that's the only console that you have, and it finally comes out 3 years later, I wanted to play this game for 3 years, but I don't have the money to do it to get another system. I'm going to get it for the system that I have. So yeah, I get that. I've never actually thought about that, but that's a good point.
Yeah. That's all kind of I had on the Nintendo stuff. Let me ask you this real quick, guys. Did Sony miss out on not having an E3 press conference this year?
No, they didn't.
What do you think?
I don't think so either.
I missed out on them being there. I'll be completely honest. My hype level for this year's E3 was down. Granted, my power, I was dealing with power outage issues, and I had, work, and as it usually happens, I had a lot of things going on that impeded me from seeing things, a lot of it live. I had to watch it after the fact, but in previous years, the minute I can watch it, I'm watching it. This year, I just kind of lackadaisical when I had the time, went into it. And a big part of that is because Sony wasn't there. But I feel like Sony did what I felt like Sony was going to do. They just trickled out their stuff leading up to E3. There's been, even though they're not at E3, they've been very active on Twitter about the games that are coming there. We're going to have this game's going to come out here, and this game is going to come out with some type of maybe timed exclusivity or something like that. I don't feel like they missed it. I feel like, even though selfishly I wanted them to be there, if they indeed didn't really have anything new to show, which seems like they're being true to their word, without just showing stuff they've shown for the last 2 times, it made sense for them to not be there. Now, I fully expect them to be back next year, especially if they're launching PS5 or whatever it's going to be called.
Yeah.
I expect it. Or right before E3, they're going to actually have their own event, which I could see that as well. But when they didn't go this E3, I thought maybe they'll have their own event, or at the very least one of those state of plays things right before, and they didn't do that. I was like, this is really strange. And then after watching this year's E3, I'm like, they really didn't need to be here. It's still a bummer, but I don't think they needed to be there this year in particular.
Yeah, I think this year, for them not being at E3, I think it was just a product of where they are in their cycles. I mean, they just put out 3 or 4 huge first party games over this past year, and they're in the middle of developing the PS5, and they're in the middle of developing these other games. I'm sure we're gonna get some sequels. Maybe they just didn't have enough time or enough to show of the games that are in development. So them not being here, I think it's a product of where they are in their development of all the things that they're doing.
I agree with everything you guys have said. I don't think they missed out on not being there this year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. So let me ask you guys this question, and this will be the question of the week for the Super Friends. Everyone's going to say who won E3. I don't like it going that way because I think we win as fans and as gamers. Who do you think had the best press conference, Chris? Just overall.
I guess I would have to say Microsoft because I feel like they did have a lot of content there. Their content was all over the board. So, able to please people of all different styles of games that they like. And I feel like they had one of the biggest wow moments with the whole Keanu Reeves thing, even though it wasn't really a lot of their conference was not something specific to Microsoft. I mean, the vast majority of the games that they showed are going to be multi-platform games, and it's not something per se exclusive to them. But I feel like they had a lot of the stuff that, because Sony wasn't there, all the big 30 parties like, well, if we're not having our own show, we got to show up on Microsoft stage, and that's where they were. And so I feel like they had the excitement factor.
What about you, Patrick?
This E3 was a little different because no press conference really stood out to me. There was no like, hey, boom, 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 for 45 minutes, we're going to show you games that are be coming out all this year. Like, a lot of the press conferences were like, hey, these games are coming out in 2020. I mean, that was the theme for it was like 2020, 2020, 2020. Like, 2020 is going to be huge, not only for games, but for our bank accounts, because this is going to be the problem. Like, it was like 2018 when it was arguably one of the best years for gaming. And I think 2020 is going to be right up there. But as who won, I mean, like, it's a toss up because not everyone had like from beginning to end awesome. I mean, there were snippets. I mean, we had just talked about our favorite things about each press conference, and each one only had a few. It's like we didn't talk about everything because, I mean, like when they for Xbox they said, hey, this was launching on Game Pass in 2020, launching on Game Pass in 2020. Game Pass is pretty cool, but I'm not going to be able to play these games. There's like 3 of the 14 games that they had said is launching on Game Pass is in 2019. So I don't know. If I had to pick one, I would say Ubisoft because I love Ubisoft games. They talked about Watch Dogs. They talked about, what was the other one? Rob McElhenney when he came out with his new TV show, Ghost Recon. We talked a little bit about that. But yeah.
Yeah, no Splinter Cell though, man. No Splinter Cell.
Right, yeah, no
rough.
Splinter Cell. That's crazy.
Yeah. I'm with Chris. I think Microsoft had the best press conference, but I think, Patrick, you're not wrong either. I don't think any of them were, home run after home run after home run. It was a lot of seeing games we've already seen, DLC for stuff, add-on characters for things like Smash Brothers, and I was like, that's fine, but doesn't make for like exciting conferences. But I think getting information about Project Scarlet, seeing this stuff with Game Pass, and the fact, like Chris said, and I think this is the key, all the games, since PlayStation wasn't going to be there, all the third-party games wanted to be on the Microsoft stage. I think that gave them probably the best press conference. But overall, I was actually a little underwhelmed by this E3, and maybe part of that is that last E3, the 3 of us were all sitting in a room together, watching it, and that maybe has something to go with it. But I also feel like last year we saw a lot of like new IP that was released or teased that we hadn't seen before, and I felt like this year we saw a lot of the stuff we'd previously seen or known about, and then some additions and some support for ongoing games, and not a lot of new IP we saw this year.
Yeah, I agree.
And so that's just kind of, I think, overall I was down a little bit. Still a good E3, and there was a lot of stuff there. And, depending on where you're at, there could have been a lot of things there for you. But just for me, it was a little down. I agree, Chris. If Sony would have been there, it would have been great for me personally. But I did miss them.
Yeah.
I did miss Sony. So anyway, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Chris, why don't you tell the Super Friends where they can find you on social medias, how they can find you on the podcast. Rolling out the red carpet for you, my friend.
My Twitter handle is @breadfan35. There's also my gamer tag on virtually everything. The podcast that I'm on is Married to the Games. We're on iTunes, soon to be Apple Podcasts. When iTunes dies.
Yep.
We're on Spotify. We're on, I think, iHeartRadio of all places. We're in the Google Play Store. You can find us there. Feel free to give us a listen. I think especially if you're looking for something that's family friendly, and just talking about, four guys that have regular normal lives, but also like to play games and just talk about all that kinds of stuff. It might be right up your alley. Our Twitter handle for that is at MTTGcast. All four of us have access to that, so any one of us might be chatting with you if you decide to hit us up on Twitter over there. And that is pretty much it. We do have a Facebook group as well. We do have a Patreon if that's something you're interested in. If you give us a listen, you're like, hey, I kind of like these guys. I'd like to throw them a buck. Feel free to do it, but there's no need by any means. You can just listen and enjoy the sounds in your ears. So if that's what you'd like to do.
In your ear holes,
In your
as
ear
we
holes,
say
yes,
here.
absolutely.
Patrick, rolling out the red carpet for you. Where can the Super Friends find you?
Okay, so the people can find me on Twitter at Nova Beyond. I am Hollywood Bones everywhere else.
You are Hollywood
So,
Bones. That's who you are.
So yeah, you can find me there. And then the Good Morning Guys podcast, you can find us on Twitter at the GMG Podcast. We are on all podcast services that are out there, like iHeartRadio, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. We have a Facebook group as well. Just four guys who have normal lives that love to play games and talk about a different topic every week. And this week we are talking about customer service. So yeah, check us out.
Nice. Well, Super Friends, from all of us here at the Fortress of Nerditude to all of you out there, wherever you may be, may the Force be with you. Always.